You're talking about military, you fight 100%. I'd fight on bathrooms. I'd fight on high school. But I draw the line on sports. I draw professional sports. I draw the line on giving free surgeries.
It's so funny. The article that he didn't read speaks about how this could exactly be weaponized against the general public and people like him, where it's like they knew and they did tests to find out what would be a wedge issue. What is the most meritocratic thing in American society? Sports. And it would be really easy to get people convinced that this is a serious problem in America if we use this as the wedge. And right away, Cenk's like, but I care about the sports. The sports are important.
To the right attitude that the Democrats usually have. Of course, I kept warning over and over again, if she does that, she's going to lose. And she did do that, and she lost.
But look, here's the thing.
But yes, an open primary, I think, would have put forth would have put forth a stronger candidate regardless.
Yeah.
But we also don't know, like, how chaotic that process would have looked like as well.
Who cares? So let's just break it down one by one. You agree that Biden should have withdrawn a year and a half ago?
I agree that Biden should have picked a better VP candidate that he knew was going to be the transitional.
Can we also give the right wing a tiny bit of credit here? I mean, they go too far when they say she's just a DEI hire. She was the Attorney General of California. She was a senator from California.
She had the
was she picked because she was a black woman? Of course, she was picked because she was a black woman.
I mean, Biden said that was the real reason why she not only picked. I'll take it one step further. It's not even Kamala Harris that frustrates.
Yeah, I know. He's already starting out of the gates. It's like, should we give the right a bit of credit here? Fuck them. Jesus Christ. Why are you still doing this? I hate this so much already.
Court appointment than most of the other Supreme Court justices. And he still fucked the bag up by turning around and being like, oh, yeah, I'm picking a black woman, Jack. And it was fucking nutty because, that's the first time we've had a public defender sit on the top court. That was not a DEI hire in the way that conservatives mention it.
So do you know that I'm against affirmative action? I've always been against affirmative action. And
wait, really?
Yeah. And the reason I did not know that. Yeah. The reason is because Ketanji Brown Jackson is an excellent Supreme Court justice who's perfectly qualified. So is Sonia Sotomayor. But the minute that any minority,
you never used to say that out loud, but now
gets any position of power, respect, etc., what does everybody do? I just got it because they're black. They just got it because they're this.
No, I think that
is the fucking right wing. What is wrong with you? It's like if you had the mentality where it's like, well, you know what? The only reason Biden ever became the vice president, because he was actually just a career failing upward kind of white dude, was because Obama picked him. Was that the DEI hire? You know, was Kamala's running rate? Was Waltz a DEI hire? It's one of those things where you're giving in to the right wing framing of this and just being like, oh well, yeah. I mean, I just care about meritocracy, about people doing this for the best possible reason.
The real affirmative action is legacy admissions.
100%. We even have a petition on tyt.com to end legacy petitions, because if you're against affirmative action, you have to be against affirmative action for super rich dudes whose dad went to Princeton or gave Princeton $1 million. Okay,
yeah. George W. Bush going to Yale. You know,
yeah, that's totally bullshit. And by the way, you know who else was an affirmative action pick? Joe Biden, because Obama picked him because he was an old white guy. He's like,
old
I don't
racist,
really care.
Old racist white guy who
by
has
the way,
gas.
You know that with absolute certainty, because in his final,
when they say that America is a diverse country and that we want our student body population to be more representative of the country as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think that actually makes it a more, these are some of my most rad lib takes, I would say. But I do think that actually makes it a better learning environment in general. When you're a kid from the countryside that has never really encountered black people other than seeing black people and black culture on television. When you actually go to college and you're in a dorm and your dorm mate is a black person, for the first time you're actually encountering and developing interpersonal relationships with people that you otherwise never would have. I think that makes for a better learning environment.
So two things about that. Look, as you were talking, I came up with an analogy here. Let's see how it goes. I view affirmative action as kind of a counterproductive Band-Aid on a wound. So the right wing says the wound doesn't exist. No, I think the wound does exist. I just don't think that the Band-Aid is the right solution, right? Because what the Band-Aid is doing is it's covering up the wound and not letting it breathe. and not letting it heal.
You're a bit of an accelerationist
Okay, so
in that regard.
well, it's a very different acceleration.
No,
And
but
so,
that is
but I'm
what,
not trying to accelerate racism. I'm trying to end racism.
that's what pure Marxist-Leninists say about the welfare state.
Okay,
It's a
not interested in
band-aid. It's a band-aid continuation of like
I'm not interested in that. Don't label me with such things. I'm trying to do something here, all right? I'm getting a lot of success in my right-wing pivot.
reaffirming and reaffirming. We should think about race. We should think about race. We should characterize everyone on race. That doesn't help defeat racism. It perpetuates racism. So I think it's a terrible idea.
He's fully bought
I
into
hate
liberal
that we view
identity
ourselves
politic arguments of
separately
right-wingers.
based on different categories: race, gender, sexual orientation, etc. It doesn't mean that there aren't things that are going wrong now. It doesn't mean that there isn't systemic racism. It means that there's a better way to address it. And then in terms of the diversity, look, I would do not affirmative action, but whatever is the appropriate way to put a thumb on a scale, but for acceptance into schools based on class, not on race. And it's not because of class dynamics and I don't want the rich to go to good schools, etc. No, I'm saying that if you're
When you apply to a university, it's not something where when you apply, it's based solely on, like, they can get people in there who make a certain amount of income. There's also tests, scoring. There's years and years of being in different kind of public education systems, schools having access to being able to have tutors, having access to use Kumon math or something like that. That plays a massive role as well. You can ignore it.
Confucianism pilled.
okay, I'm what pilled?
Confucianism pilled.
Okay, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
you wanna. Yeah, this is once again, Jenkis, Dengis, rise up. You know, you want a Chinese style
meritocracy,
pure meritocracy, pure meritocratic approach. Now, the problem with that is that when you have underserved communities consistently, you got to put your thumb on the scale in a certain place because we don't have true equality of opportunity in this country, and obviously, people like yourself and myself, that's what we're advocating for. Republicans will turn around and bastardize that critique it by saying, you want equality of outcome. We don't want equality of outcome.
No, I
we
definitely
want
don't
true
want that.
equality of opportunity. And when there's no true equality of opportunity, when black communities are consistently underserved, when you look at the Chicago public school system that is 90% of the state of Illinois' like black and brown student body
But class
population
takes care of that.
being consistently underserved, you are getting to a point where people are not being propped up. People are not being propped up to succeed in this process. So I think like you're right. Analyzing it from the class position is good because even though there's a racial dynamic and the racial disparity that exists in the American normal order of business, the violence or the inequalities, the structural inequalities are still dished out on a class-based perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the hollers in Kentucky don't have great public schools either. So they also had to overcome a lot, right? So like saying that a black guy at Exeter should get an advantage, but a white kid in the middle of Missouri who's going to a shit public school too should not get an advantage. That makes no sense at all.
I don't think
Why not
that
help them
that's
both?
what people are advocating for, though. I mean, I don't know.
They're
I'm not
literally advocating for that. 100%.
I'm not advocating for
Okay.
that. I don't know
So
what
that's
you
why
mean.
I'm against-
I don't think people who are. I don't think that like black activist groups are saying like, no,
Yeah.
fuck the poor white people.
Yeah, thank
No,
you.
but they're saying
No
give an
one is
advantage
saying
based
that.
on race, not class. And I'm saying I 100% disagree with that.
But you're not explaining
well,
why.
Again, solution.
Okay,
regardless.
so back to Biden and Harris. So we both agree Biden should have gotten the fuck out of the race. Crazy.
Can
right?
I just say one other thing? Actually, there historically the wrong that has been committed is on the basis of race. So I think the solution to that problem, albeit should feature a class dynamic, absolutely will have some racialized component attached to it. Because you can't right a historic wrong by simply being like, yeah, we're just going to.
So look, this is really important. So let's talk
Ignore
about,
the history of,
balance.
say,
Because
slavery,
in the beginning,
Jim Crow, redlining,
let's take longshoremen or firefighters.
public education being associated
they're
with
all
housing.
white. Let's say in the South, right, where you've got massive Jim Crow laws. If you deny that and you think, oh no, black people got perfect opportunity in 1940s and 20s and 60s in the South, you're just in a different planet. So there's no point in talking to you, right? So they're at a massive, massive disadvantage to say the least. They can't get in. And the longshoremen I get it. Their instinct is, I want to give my job to my son. It's a good job. It pays well, etc. Right? So I want to pass it on to my son. Now, at some point, you have to use affirmative action in the beginning to break through that. Because if you allow that to happen, black people are never going to be able to break through, right? So you've got to, in the beginning, say, look, we're taking action based on race because the discrimination was based on race.
Wait, do you think at this point now things are fine? Do you think the problems are over? It's like, now it should be meritocracy. Racism's over. So, Obama got elected.
Well, we started in the 1960s. Here we are in 2024. If it hasn't worked by now, I got news for you. It ain't never going to work.
Yeah,
so
but
it's
that's
the wrong
but that's also
solution to a real problem.
But that's also because it hasn't even. No, Cenk is not saying racism is over. Pack it up, guys. No, he's not saying
I literally
that.
said that's not the case. The wound still exists. The wound is real.
Yeah,
he's not saying that aloud, but he's implying it.
Maybe you might not like this, but I do think that.
No, I think you're being nice. It's your uncle. The chat is right. If he's like in 2024, I mean, come on. If it hasn't worked by now, and it's like, no, these problems have not solved themselves. Just like, oh my God.
But again, reparations is a super interesting, nuanced conversation. So on the one hand, and I'll give credit to Marianne Williamson here. I thought she phrased it best back in 2020 when she said a debt is owed. And that is actually very literally true.
Yeah.
So we used the country at large and the country I love. And yes, we came to it much, much later. But that country took advantage of all of that free labor to build what we love and what we now take advantage of and what we came here for, right? So hundreds of years of free labor, no matter what your race is or what your condition is unacceptable. They never got paid for that. It's a massive robbery from African Americans in this country. So I not only acknowledge that, but I'm enraged by it. But now, what are we going to do? If you propose a reparations that's so extreme as San Francisco did, where they're like, oh, any black person can buy a house in San Francisco for $1. What the fuck?
Okay. Wait, what do you? I don't even know. Hold on. What are you talking about?
Had this insane thing where they're like, okay, now every white and non-black, including Latinos, including Middle Eastern, Asians, etc., have to give money to black people in this city or in this town where they passed it.
Wait, hold on. Let's just take a look at it first. Let's analyze it a little bit because this seems a little kooky.
You're going to see how insane it is.
This seems a little bit kooky. So proposals include financing debt forgiveness, guaranteed annual incomes for families and homes in the city for $1. San Francisco backs reparation plans, including $5 million to eligible black adults. More than 100 recommendations included payments of $5 million to every eligible black adult, the elimination of personal debt and tax burdens, guaranteed annual incomes of at least $97,000 for 250 years, and homes in San Francisco for just $1 a family. San Francisco.
Yeah, foreclosure sales, in some cases, homes in foreclosure or extreme disrepair have been listed for as little as $1, but this price usually reflects the property's poor condition and significant repair costs. These situations are not citywide policies, but rather specific market occurrences. Some cities in the U.S. have had programs where abandoned or distressed properties were sold for nominal fees, like $1 to incentivize redevelopment. However, this is not the same as houses being listed specifically for $1 to disenfranchised communities. This is a right-wing conspiracy theory that's been extrapolated from affordable housing program or foreclosure sale programs in the area. It is not at all reparations.
Reparations plans. It's like people have a multitude
enthusiastically received.
I think saying that is very.
You can't keep doing that where you you were lied. You were blatantly wrong here. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, there's a thing in there that's kind of close to what I was talking about. It's like, you just said that $1 for a house program existed as a form of reparation, and that's crazy. That program never existed. This is nonsense. It's a fairy tale. That's make-believe.
I don't think it's giving black people a house for $1. I don't think it's giving them money, etc.
Then why did you say it out loud?
The new school has proposed some interesting ideas, including, hey, what if we provided tax breaks that would be material in buying housing for African Americans? So, well, okay, that's interesting.
Chico got upset.
Or you created a fund that allows them to turn it into an education fund for their children, right?
This person also has a good point. We should have a ceasefire in Gaza has also been enthusiastically received by the Biden admin. Didn't mean they did a damn thing because politicians
but we're not arguing, guys. If you think it's absurd, great, fantastic. We all agree it's absurd.
I don't think that there are I'm sure that there are some people who think this is a fantastic idea and they could get into an academic conversation about it. It's just more so a matter of like the framing of this to make it seem as though like the
No, I'm setting the
San
outer extremes,
Francisco,
Haas.
yeah, but like
Okay, so I'm saying
No, you lied. And like honestly, it's weird. Now you're in a situation where the Thanksgiving fights between Cenk and Hasan, as long as he's going down this right-wing grift, it's just like arguing with a right-winger who's bought into the echo chamber of the right-wing conspiracies that they otherwise you don't have anyone else telling you this never happened. This is not real. It's not based in reality.
those that are really interesting about, hey, what if it was directed towards education or housing? We promised 40 acres and a mule, and we lied. We never gave them the 40 acres and a mule.
yeah, only reparations were given to slave owners, as a matter of fact, for lost revenue off of the freed African men and women.
Yeah. So you see what I'm saying? That you could do it in a way that where middle America goes, oh, I get it. That sucks. That was an injustice. And we're trying a small thing here to make up for the injustice so that it at a minimum, symbolically, to say, thank you, brothers and sisters, for putting up with this shit. Like, I know you didn't do it voluntarily, but you helped build this country and we appreciate you. So get on a page where we understand each other and appreciate each other instead of framing it as I'm taking from you. You owe me and I'm taking from you, right? So
When
that
is it framed
perpetuates
like
a
that?
wrong cycle. Whereas but in order to do that, Haas, last thing on it is you've got to have like truth and reconciliation, just like South Africa did. Here's all the fucked up shit we did.
South Africa's, South Africa's Reconstruction period also was not a great
But truth and
success either.
reconciliation was excellent. So that portion of it was great
was
because
excellent.
they said,
So we did that in Canada for Indigenous folk, and there was a bunch of recommendations, and barely any of them have been done. Not that you shouldn't do it. You absolutely should. And I think it was a worthy expenditure and a good thing to actually be able to put on and have a record of. This is the extent and damage that a genocide was creating in this country, and this is what you need to do to start undoing the damage. But also, that doesn't mean that it fixes the problem, right? Like, we haven't actually effectively, completely fixed or ameliorated the conditions for Indigenous folk in Canada who are living here.
sides, by the way. The right wing starts more identity politics than the left wing does. So now the right wing guys their heads will explode. What do you mean? You guys try to find wedge issues on every fucking thing. And then you go more and more in extreme. And I think you guys, Haas, fall into that trap way too often. We'll get to that later.
Wait, let's get to it now.
Okay.
What do you mean by that?
So you know what we're going to talk about, the trans issues. So on trans issues, as an example, over 60% of Americans agree. Of course, they should have the same constitutional rights, same rights to housing, employment.
It sounds like a thing that you want to talk about.
Does 1/3 of the country disagree? Yeah. Sad day for them. 2/3 of the country agrees trans people should be protected. I'm 100% on board for that, right? And if you're a right winger and you go, no, man, they're weird, they're different, they're blah, 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 and I'm going to hate them. Well, good luck to you, brother. I'm not going to hate them, and I'm going to protect them, okay? But that didn't work for them. So they went digging. So then they go, okay, we should ban trans people from the military.
Did you read the New York Times article I told you to read on this the last time we had this conversation?
I'm not sure I did.
About how, okay, so...
they went digging.
Yeah. So what you're describing is what I was explaining to you, that the Christian groups, the right-wing Christian nationalist groups, in the aftermath of the failed initiative to do a trans bathroom bill in North Carolina, at a time when Donald Trump was pro-trans, openly stating he was pro-trans, openly criticizing the North Carolina legislation, saying, leave it as it is, nobody cares. Caitlyn Jenner can piss in whichever bathroom she wants to piss in as long as she's pissing in Trump Tower. When all this stuff was happening, there was definitely a different attitude overall. I think part of that was because, just like you also recognize, most Americans, like, they just think trans people are being discriminated against and unjustly. And the other reason was because it just seemed like cruel and unusual for no particular reason. So what these Christian family groups did was go back to the drawing board and, hire the likes of, maybe Frank Luntz didn't personally involve himself in this one, but like people like Frank Luntz that would go and focus group and test different messages.
Yep.
And they arrived at two key points that were resilient. Americans don't necessarily care about trans issues all that much, but they do care about meritocracy. And what is the one place where there is true meritocracy? in the eyes of many Americans. Now, there's, still not perfect meritocracy, but sports is the one area where if you dominate, if you're good, you're going to dominate. If you're dominant, then you're going to get elevated, right? So they packaged anti-trans sentiment with sports, and specifically children's sports, right? And that is where we arrive at, 60% of the country, or even larger percentages than that, don't think trans women should be participating in sports with cis women, specifically trans girls, competing in athletic endeavors with cis girls.
Yeah. So that's exactly my point, Haas. And when they laid that trap, first of all, the right wing should acknowledge that was identity politics being played by the right wing. The right wing did the polls. They did the studies. They were looking for something that the American people would hate about the left, about trans people, about LGBTQ people. When you go looking and searching and digging on identity, don't tell me you're not doing identity politics.
No, this is identity politics, and the right does it all the time. Now, listen, here's the thing, okay? You understand this to be a distraction. Like, you recognize that it's a distraction, which is why I don't think either of us are saying that this should be the...
Even though Cenk brought it up, he's like, oh, you know what we're going to talk about? Trans people. It's like, what?
Party, which is that, like, no, trans women have to compete with cis women. I don't think anyone is making that argument at all.
No.
But I think we should, it would serve us both well to openly recognize, and I think you do as well, that this hyper focusing on, trans athletes at the high school level all the way to the collegiate level is a distraction that most Americans might have an opinion on, but don't necessarily care about. It's not a major driver of turnout. It's not something that people go out and vote for.
I don't agree.
No. Okay. Well, we can have that argument in a second. I will explain it to you why I don't think it's a real issue. Part of the reason why is that it's just simply not a real issue because do you know the number of trans athletes nationally?
So I know that
under the collegiate level.
No, it's microscopic.
It's
That's
40.
why
The number is 40.
Yeah, and so like 20 states, 20 red states passed a law against transgender girls participating in high school sports, and they couldn't name one transgender girl in their state that participated in high school sports.
Yes.
So that's exactly my point. We start with agreement.
Even Spencer Cox vetoed the bill in Utah originally, and he actually wrote like a pretty compelling argument as to why he was vetoing it. And Governor...
What he doesn't make the connection for is that how much of right-wing media, including TYT, is dominated to talking about trans people in sports compared to how many people participated in. And is there any other example where you see something like that, where it's like, hey, by the way, this concerns about 40 Americans out of, 338 million, something around there, and yet it's going to be all of our coverage. It's going to be all that we talk about today.
Totally agree that it's a microscopic issue that affects almost no one in the country, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So at the collegiate level, 40 trans athletes.
Also, I don't even think
we don't
that's
have
true.
health care for everyone. This is bullshit.
I don't even think
this
that's
is meant
true.
to distract us.
I don't even
disagree
it does
on how
impact
to
people.
react to it.
It does actually impact a lot of cis women. There's more cis women than there are trans women, and there are a lot of young girls that this could technically impact because now you have bills like the one in Ohio, the penis inspection bills, like the one that they have in Ohio, where like one of the parents from the opposing team could be like, "That's a trans girl, actually," and then they have to literally go and traumatize this like young girl who in many instances is not statistically it is highly unlikely that person is trans to begin with.
So
and it ends up harming cis women even more than it ends up harming trans women.
So look, I said this exact same point on trigonometry, and their audience hated it. But this is the reality. The reason I make a distinction between high school and professional sports is because in high school, what you're saying is, like Ohio, if I really want to institute this, even though it affects almost no trans or cis girls, if in the world, in Ohio as it is, but if I go to implement it, now I got to check everybody's genitals, and there's got to be a genital checker, right? And let me guess, tons of Republican older men are going to volunteer to check the genitals of our high school kids. And I hate it. I don't want it. It's like a groomer pervert factory. And they're
Good point, Lanston. Why even talk about it? It's not the me talking about these issues to push back against them. It's that if there's a single story in the media that concerns trans people, it could be one instance of a trans person who actually went into a bathroom to physically assault someone else. One story of a trans athlete who won in one single competition. One story. These are again the hyper focus of the right and right wing media. It's what they're going to now broadcast all over the place and vilify every other trans, and like Hasan is pointing out here, cis people too. The bathroom bill directly impacts all women. There's a lot of women who are not considered passing by Republican or right-wing standards. So if you suddenly open the door to Republicans being able to be like, you're not allowed in this bathroom because I determine who goes in this bathroom, and you happen to be someone who doesn't want to present very feminine, you don't want to have long hair, you don't want to wear a whole bunch of makeup, you don't want to be showing cleavage, you don't want to be showing all the indicators where a man would be like, you're a woman, I recognize woman, titties, boobies, woman, right? If you're not someone who has the ability to afford to look like someone who is going to be considered the stereotypical woman, then you're going to run into trouble. Then there's going to be all of these, and there is, by the way, all these compilations of right-wing weirdos going into bathrooms and being like, I want to see the penis, show me your penis. And this is happening to cis women, because there's more cis women than there is trans women, because the world has lost its fucking mind, because people buy into these right-wing Fox News narratives that again concern a very small percentage of the population.
Democratic Party's campaign was actually saying like, no, we have to issue bottom surgery for undocumented migrants, outside of Kamala Harris saying that in an ACLU questionnaire in 2019. When faced with the question, what will you do for trans people? She just gave that answer, which was a bad answer to give regardless. But was there like a hyper focus from the Democratic Party's campaign that I'm missing?
So Trump starts running the ad. And it instantly jumps to the most effective ad according to Trump's internal numbers and according to Kamala Harris's internal numbers. So at that point,
that's also not true. David Plouffe literally said on the Pod Save America autopsy that they engaged in that the ad actually wasn't all that impactful at all.
Yeah, bullshit.
Oh, you don't believe it?
Say that? I know.
There's not a single exit poll that shows that Americans or voters in general are directly concerned as a top issue or key issue with trans people. That's just not true. It's always the same things. Surprise, surprise. It's always fucking the economy. It's always having a difficulty affording a house, having a difficulty affording groceries, having a difficulty affording consumer goods, all that kind of stuff. It's always going to be something that should be related back to like class, right? Like it's not at all. I was really concerned about the they them army taking over.
Ad budget on that ad,
I think
because both sides thought it was the single most effective ad.
I think that's literally the reason why Kamala Harris was able to actually catch up to Donald Trump on not only the economy because of their hyper focus on the trans shit, but
you thought that helped Kamala Harris?
No, I don't. I think that this kind of hyper focus on a marginalized group is not moving people to go out and vote in any meaningful capacity, for some of the reasons that you also mentioned, but also because most people don't know who the fuck trans people are. They've never met a trans person. They don't give a shit. They just care about the economy. And when you're hyper focusing on just like, trans people and like dominating trans people or some shit, even if it's something that they agree with, they're like, after a certain point, there is outrage fatigue. And I think on the trans issue, we like consultants and people who are hyper focused on the media care far more about the effectiveness of ads like that than the actual Americans that went out and voted. And you saw this reality.
We lost, they won.
No, I know, but okay.
But it wasn't on this issue.
I mean, like it's so in the real world. That they won, we lost. In the
that's why
in
you
the
have to
world
look
of
at, that's why you have to,
but then that's why it's ludicrous to be like, well, yeah, I mean, it was a very effective ad. Did Trump win because of a universal fear of trans people and that just drove voters out to the polls? I didn't see a single person who was interviewed or a single exit poll, if you want to talk about statistics, where they said that this was an issue that concerned them or this was why they voted.
Bad. And it moved people and it cost Kamala Harris tons and tons of votes. You disagree.
Yes. And the reason why I disagree with it is because, well, I don't completely disagree with it. And I'll explain to you why. And I think you and I are going to be in agreement with this. I think that the only way that ad is even remotely sticky when, or even remotely effective, when I still question the legitimacy of how effective the ad was, because there's plenty of examples of people actually defending trans people and then winning by resounding numbers all across the country.
It depends on what issue, though, Haas.
It's because the Democrats they stand for nothing. There is nothing that unites the base of support for the Democratic Party. They are this weird big tent, third way neoliberal party that is constantly pointing to institutional norms and defending this notion of civility. If that is your overarching campaign strategy, then yes, if you stand for nothing, you will, people can turn around and tell others what you actually stand for. They can reframe what you actually stand for and say this is the type of stuff that they care about actually. And therein lies the problem. And I think you and I will agree on this. If it was like a Bernie Sanders style candidacy, if Kamala Harris was like, I want Medicare for all, that Americans are suffering. I want to fix the housing crisis by implementing a federal jobs program backed like, mass housing boom that will actually fix the housing markets in all these big cities and all across the country by building a shit ton of houses. No public-private partnership, none of that. No opportunity economy language whatsoever. We're gonna just fucking build, baby, build. Okay. If those are some of the key markers that you're focusing on, this does two things. Okay. This does two things. Number one, Republicans are reactionary, so now they have something that they had to fight against. And if they don't have anything to fight against, they're going to find new fucking wedge issues to make everybody pay attention to, no matter how silly or stupid, right? So now they have to fight against that policy and present why that policy is bad. Now they have to sit there and lie about why giving healthcare to every American is actually going to be devastating because they're backed by their corporate donors. So that's a major issue with the way that the Democratic Party operates in general. And I think you agree with me on this, right? If you give him something to fight for, if you give him something to fight against, they're not going to fucking find new ways find new things that they can just like draw a wedge on. So that's number one.
Okay.
Number two. Okay. The second thing is when you don't have this broad, very obvious policy that you like earnestly are fighting for, that you have been able to communicate to like the majority of the population, like this is my North Star. This is the key defining issue of the Democratic Party this election cycle. Okay. All of a sudden, when you cave and capitulate, the second point I was going to make is when you cave and capitulate the right-wing framing on these issues, the only thing you end up doing is basically admitting that the Republicans are right. And the Democrats have done this on immigration. The Democrats have done this on policing. The Democrats have allowed the Republicans to dominate the space over and over and over again. And they've done it with trans issues as well, or they're doing it now with trans issues as well. Just call it out for what it is. It's a simple distraction. This is not going to put food on your table. This is the way that the Republican Party gets away with being in the pocket of billionaires openly by saying this is the only thing that the Democrats care about. Trans people are your neighbors. They're not your landlord. They're not your boss, and they're not the reason why healthcare is so costly. Okay, they're a tiny group of people in this country that just want to live their same lives. They literally have the same exact class interests as you. They literally also have to pay rent at the end of the day. They also still are harmed by the same fucking shitty job opportunities that people have. They also are worried about not being able to own a home or retire at a reasonable age. The idea that these people are the reasons as to why you're experiencing economic anxieties is silly. Don't ever have this conversation. That's what I say. And that's how I deal with it as someone who is obviously somewhat radical in my pro-trans message overall, because
so look,
it's silly. It's a nonsensical position that you even recognize as nonsense.
So let me start with the agreement and move to the disagreement. So the agreement is super important here because you're right. And this ad is in a sense the perfect symbol of, in my experience, you'll only agree with half of this, but the merger of what is wrong with the Democratic Party's corporate wing and the radical left wing. you smush them
radical left
together.
wing.
We'll get to labels in a minute. Okay, so you smush them together and you have this ad, and this ad helped Trump win and Kamala Harris lose. Why are you smushing them together? For the exact reason that you explained, Haas. Because if they were like Bernie Sanders and they were economic populists, Bernie can say, why are we talking about that issue? We should be doing higher minimum wage, and we should be doing universal health care, et cetera. And then now we're having a real conversation about things that affect people's lives. And Kamala Harris can't do that because she's too busy pleasing the donor class, right?
Tony West. Shouts out to my man, Tony West.
And who cost us the election more, that ad or Tony West? Not close. Tony West. Okay, so Tony West, who's the Uber executive, that's her, brother-in-law, told her, "Oh, you know what? You're too tough on corporations. Instead, you should give them a big bear hug. Go out there and put out that 90 corporate CEOs signed a letter saying you're awesome, and that you'll work for corporations and do everything that they want."
Bernie did say trans rights are human rights, by the way, just so we're clear.
Liz Cheney's one of the most unpopular people, progressive. Data for Progress did a poll that showed the more she campaigned with Liz Cheney, the more she lost support. She lost enthusiasm. It was a super dumb idea. And that cost us more than this ad did. This whole idea of, oh my God, I love big business.
You're the one who brought up the ad,
everything
by the
big
way.
business tells
He's
me.
doing that
Look
weird
at Mark
pivot
Cuban.
again.
He's on every cable channel telling you that I will do whatever the fuck business interests want. It's the worst idea in the world, especially when you're running against Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's going, hey, here's a billionaire, Elon Musk. I'm just going to give the government to him. And here's another billionaire, Miriam Adelson, and I'm going to give foreign policy to her. And here's Tim Mellon, weirdo guy who inherited all of his money, and douchebag who wants tax cuts because he's just rich and earned nothing in his life. And I'm going to give him tax cuts for the rich, right? But they never make that case because they're corporate.
Yeah, but why? This is such a pivot. Then why bring up the ad and bring up the trans issue at all? To be like, oh yeah, here it is. Look at this. This is the real problem, actually. The thing I didn't just bring up.
We should hate them, okay? And so what the right wing doesn't understand is both the populist left and what they call the woke left, I call radical left or whatever. We'll figure out the label in a minute. But in this case, you're on the right side.
Hasan
you
on the
say,
left.
Fuck the corporate interests. Fuck the donors, right? So, and the populist right agrees with that. So that's actually an interesting point that we should come back to, a point of agreement we should come back to. But the part where we disagree, Haas, is you say, well, if they're digging in on a wedge issue, ignore it. But Kamala Harris literally did that. They had a giant debate about whether to address it or not.
No.
They even pulled ads
You're
where
misunderstanding
they addressed it.
You're misunderstanding
me. And they decided, oh, fuck it, let's not address
You're
it. And
wrong.
It was a mistake.
They literally also, like, they did this with immigration especially. Like, they were like, we're not going to ignore it. We're just going to get ahead of it. And what they did with immigration, they're going to do with trans issues next election cycle. And it's the same principle over and over again. It makes you look like a hypocrite, and it makes you look like the Republicans were right all along. And the only thing it does is prime your base into conceding and agreeing with the Republican framing on an issue. If
So
there
what
was
do you
any
do instead? What I say is I delineate. So when you say, hey, Andy Bashir runs against it, but which issue? So if you're talking about constitutional rights, you fight for trans rights 100%. You're talking about military, you fight 100%. I'd fight on bathrooms. I'd fight on high school. But I draw the line on sports. I draw professional sports. I draw the line on giving free surgeries.
It's so funny. The article that he didn't read speaks about how this could exactly be weaponized against the general public and people like him, where it's like they knew and they did tests to find out what would be a wedge issue. What is the most meritocratic thing in American society? Sports. And it would be really easy to get people convinced that this is a serious problem in America if we use this as the wedge. And right away, Cenk's like, but I care about the sports. The sports are important. What about the sports?
Till people are primed into caring about it. That's my point. It's been happening for a very long time for prisoners that want to get this component of healthcare, and nobody
And by the way, why is every person who thinks that this is a big issue and says, I think that sports committee should be allowed to be making decisions of this? I agree. The Olympic Committee is the one that actually made the decision years ago before most people knew who trans people were, that it would be acceptable for people to participate if they didn't identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth, if they had certain characteristics and they had done certain things medically. So if you had been on HRT for a certain period of time, if you had done this, if you had done that, then it would be acceptable. And as of now, there's still not a single, trans woman or trans man. There's one non-binary person on the soccer team. They have a gold medal, but outside of them and that Canadian soccer team that has the non-binary player, there's not a single trans woman or trans man that's ever won gold in the Olympics.
No, first of all, you get all these crazy
Republicans
people
are
online.
saying that. Republicans are saying that.
No, I know, but we're not saying that.
No,
you get
I
all
know.
these crazy people online who are like, oh my God, if you don't agree to free surgeries for every trans person on planet Earth, you're a fucking Nazi. Well, those people exist, and fuck those people.
Okay.
That is the radical left, and they are stupid, and they do cost us elections.
No, you're hyper focusing, and I've had this conversation privately with you many times over. You are hyper focusing on people that are in your replies on Twitter, and because
so you agree
that's
with
all
me,
you
that radical left
because
is bullshit,
all you interact
stupid dumbasses. Do you agree?
There are a million people that are both in your replies
And in your brain. Do you know that meme where it's like you're stuck inside the room and every single corner has like, trans flags and stuff? It's like that, but it's like, also with like communism symbols or something where he's like, it's the extreme radical left that are asking me to do everything and calling me a Nazi.
13 douchebags online. That's what I said from day one.
I know, but why the fuck would you ever hyper focus on
but
people like that?
Look, no. So you might be doing the right thing. Hold on.
You're doing the Bill Maher thing. You're
bullshit,
demanding that there needs to be a sister
bullshit.
No, you're
Hold
doing
on,
the
let me
sister
explain.
soldier moment.
No,
That's it.
bullshit.
No, you're trying
Okay,
to.
so the minute we said the most reasonable things on earth, which you now agree with apparently, then what happened?
Always
it wasn't just
agreed
the
with.
13 douchebags online.
I
And by
don't
the
think we
way,
agree
everybody
on this.
said, no, those 13 douchebags represent all the left. You're not on the left anymore because the 13 douchebags control the left. And then what happened next? Then Majority Report jumped in, and Lance from the Serfs, and all the other little dirtbags jumped in, and they were like, Cenk and Cenk are turning right. The 13 douchebags are right. We need to protect every trans person should get free
Listen,
surgery.
we got.
Even in China,
Okay,
even though we
hold-
have nothing to do with China,
You gotta
we
stop.
hate them. They're Nazis.
You got to. Okay.
I mean, I'm 100% right. Every
You're-
dirtbag.
Never once called him a Nazi. He won't stop saying it. But like, I knew as soon as I popped in the chat, he'd lose his shit. So that's why I'm typing in the chat right
reframing
now.
an issue that is now we've moved away from the electoral consequences of a trans ad to your own personal anger and frustration that you have with
Yes.
left-wing media online. We are
So do you agree left-wing media online,
we are
those guys that I
11
listed are full of shit?
I have
and in a tiny, stupid minority?
I have disagreements with everyone in this space, but there's a reason why seemingly I don't catch the same amount of strays that you do because I don't hyper focus.
I can tell you why.
I don't hyper focus. What do you think it is?
They think you're hot, young. I don't mean attractive. God bless on that. Okay, I'm also obviously hot. I mean, as in they think, oh, the young people watch Hasan. He's cool, and you give the thing of like.
Fair dues. I mean, that's kind of hard to deny, right? He's very good looking, but yeah, who gives a fuck? That has nothing to do with it. It's that like there's a lot of people who are also in those spaces and are like Cenk and like others, by the way, who do not in any way, shape, or form refuse to actually like listen to people around them who are actually trying to tell them, please, for the love of fucking God, do something about this. Stop lying. Stop pushing right wing rhetoric.
You like criticisms that you've received.
I came here when you were mentioning. Thank you.
You go, whoa.
Thanks,
Why
Cenk.
are you hyper-personalizing it?
Because
just because I called you a Nazi, now it's personal to you?
Myself, you, Majority Report.
But I
all
never
of
changed
this-
my policy.
All
I
of
never
this,
changed my
all
policy.
of this is inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. And whenever there's like drama, for example, I've been getting attacked mercilessly by my former podcast co-host that has been actively trying to deplatform me for the past 2 months because he thinks that, or he's claiming that I am creating a space that is anti-Semitic. The way I've dealt with that.
Which, by the way, Number of times I've called Cenk a Nazi. Still, to this day, you can go back and watch the videos. It's still at a whopping 0. Have not called him a Nazi. It's this again. These are nightmares of his own design. He's got the shit in his brain where he's just like, every single person, the majority report, rational, national, they're all calling me a Nazi. No one's ever called you a Nazi. Not once. We had polite disagreements at first, and then you just went fucking crazy, and then everything just lost.
There's never going to be any sort of real
Why am I gonna
solidarity.
show humility to you, a bunch of idiots who are wrong?
Because I
like, what does humility mean? Like, oh, maybe you're right about your dumb opinion that's going to cost us this election. Okay. Maybe you're right about your dumb opinion that gets the majority of the country to hate us when our economic positions are overwhelmingly popular. Maybe you making us intensely unpopular when we should be focusing on universal health care, higher wages, paid family.
Stop blaming this on trans people. What is wrong with you? You're still doing it. They just super unpopular opinion cost us the election. But it had nothing to do with that. No, I totally agree with you. Yeah, no, it was economic. I agree. And maybe it was the war in Gaza. Yeah, the genocide. But also it was the radical left and all the douchebags.
Branding works online. I am of this mindset that every single person is far too busy and far too self-involved to pay attention to the more nuanced conversations that others are having on any particular issue. This is why, even when there is like a faucet of smears that I am attacked with clips that are completely out of context, I address it and I move on. Okay? I address it and I move on, and I come at this conversation with an understanding that most people are not fully aware of what my analysis is on any particular matter. This has happened in the past with, me purchasing a house where people were made a big fucking deal about it. It's okay. And I, at that same, even back then I said, look, people are angry. People are frustrated with their position in society. People are frustrated with a lack of opportunity. And in that process, when they see fucking rich asshole like myself, buy a house, they're going to get mad at me. And there's a healthy amount of anger towards wealthy people there that I agree with as well. I think that they're misdirecting their anger at the wrong person. But ultimately, I move on. If I spend every waking moment covering, the anger that I'm receiving, and if I spend every waking moment covering things that are out of context, then I'm not going to be able to, I'm just going to be that. I'm going to be the person who is responding to drama all the fucking time when I feel like there are far larger, more consequential issues at play.
Now, let me take the other side on the meta conversation.
Hyperfixating on not only a very small sliver of society that is, in your honest opinion, has been openly targeted as the major reason as to why people are angry, is offering legitimacy to the right-wing position. Yes. I think there's a more effective way of communicating that, and it's something that I do on a regular basis, which is, this is a simple distraction.
And honestly, that face he made right there, I mean, that kind of, if there was a mime acting the whole thing out as to why his positions are wrong, that's it. You're not willing to ever listen. You're not willing to take in criticism when you know this not to be true. If someone pushes back against you, it's like, well, we fight back, we punch, we have to fight hard. And it's like, yeah, but to what? Why? If on one end you're like, I agree with you, this was not the sole reason why Republicans just won the election. No shit, it wasn't trans people. What the fuck are you talking about? If you're aware of that, then why are you like, no, it's the radical left, the radical left? And then it's like, no, it's not. What are you talking about? Some random streamer in Canada is not the reason why she just lost the election. I don't have that power.
That we're against all trans rights.
Okay.
So that your position to that is surrender, okay? And no, I never surrender. So look, and here, let me explain why though. Do I think that's surrender? Because we've tried this, Haas. So let's, on that meta conversation. So we tried it with Trump. So Young Turks viewers will remember in the beginning when he first started running in 2015, I thought he was so illegitimate that he was doing it as a con, which by the way turned out to be wrong.
Who?
Trump. And we blurred out his face. First we didn't show him, then we blurred out his face, and then eventually we gave up and started showing who he was. Ignoring the beast never works. So then I remember when.
But these people are not the beast.
Hold on, let me finish the point. When Dave Rubin came out and started lying, 100% lies, lie after lie after lie, we ignored it because we're like, "What? That's fucking mental, right?" But then the lies started to take root because he goes on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's like, "Oh, really? Tell me more. Oh my God, Dave Rubin's so right." And then he went on like 100 shows. And so then Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire comes up, and we're gigantic, and Crowder comes up, and we're like, "Oh, these are pimples on our ass. Who cares about Shapiro? He's so small. Crowder, who cares? He's tiny. He's microscopic. Who cares, right?" And we didn't address them. And you know what happened? They festered and festered and festered. And next thing you know, Dave Rubin, everybody started to think, "Oh, I wonder if he's right about the Young Turks and they have some evil, nefarious purpose."
So why not deal with the issues then? Fighting back isn't just like all of a sudden calling names, you know?
Dave Rubin, they're like, "Oh yeah, he's that dumb guy," right?
Yeah, but that's not because of you. That's also because of Majority Report, ironically enough. And people like myself.
I know. When we fight back, everybody gets their feelings.
The point is, it's not.
And
just to be fair, it doesn't hurt my feelings. I think it's funny. I think it's funny. This dude is still mentioning me when fucking. How long ago has it been? And since he's been like called out for that too, he's still just like, "And Lance of the Serfs, that motherfucker."
So in many respects, you feel chastised individually. You feel like you've been outcast by the left. Or whatever, like the media representation of the left is.
They're not the left. I'm the left.
Okay.
Nice.
No, 100%.
Okay.
You agree with that?
Okay. Please, just listen.
No, because we have to.
But you're not the singular force.
The idiots are making everyone think they are the left. They're like, "We're the left. We're the real left. Okay, we are super extreme. We want free surgeries for every criminal. Yes, we're the left." And Nazi. And Haas, what happens? People think they are the left. So if you say you're right, Cenk, those are the extreme idiot left.
I don't think
you
that
are
they're
the left.
It's Highlander rules. Always has been. Yeah, I've known that from day one, baby. Yeah, I'm coming for the crown. That's all I'm gonna say. And then I will ascend. I know, and that's why you're scared, because you feel it, right? You just see, someone who's younger, better looking, and those are the only two qualities that matter as well.
That we have, living on planet Earth. It's about the economy of time and utilizing it appropriately. I don't spend any time. I do not spend any time.
Just let him attack you and sit there and don't correct anything. Let all the lies fester. Wait, you didn't let me finish. So Dave Rubin, now he's a laughingstock. Then Jimmy Dore comes
because
in
Dave Rubin is a right winger.
Yeah.
Majority Report is not.
So
yes,
you are in agreement with the Majority Report.
No. Hold on. Let me finish the thought. The thought. So on Jimmy Dore, he comes in. He goes, "Oh, they're paid by Nancy Pelosi. They're paid by the CIA." Fucking lunatic, right? And so we let it fester. Finally, we're like, "Get this fucker out of here." And we tell the people truth and we crush him. Now he's a fucking joke on the internet, right? So we go on. And anytime we don't fight, it festers. Anytime we do fight, we crush them and we move the fuck on. And nobody thinks Jimmy Dore's the left anymore. Nobody thinks Dave Rubin's the left anymore. And so now these guys come and attack us going, "Yeah, we're the real left, we're the real left."
There's a difference.
And you're saying, "No, don't crush them. Just let them fester."
By the way, things I've never once said before. I am the only one true left. I am the left. You're a Nazi. Cenk's a Nazi. TYT are Nazi. I've never said any of those things. Who talks like this? Just him. By the way, he's the only person who speaks like this. I am the left. I am the one left.
Fucking day for you, and I'm not going to let you lie and pretend that the Democratic voters are on your side because you're a fucking liar. And they're not on your side. Do you agree that the Democratic voters are on my side?
I don't care what the Democratic voters are on, of whichever side they're on right now. We've lost the plot. Okay.
No,
we've completely lost the plot because now the conversation is about like.
This is without question the best Cenksgiving ever.
Majority Report, and I think that's a completely and utterly unproductive conversation to have.
Your strategy is when grifters on the left attack you, whether it's
I don't think
Rubin,
they're grifters.
I think Cedar's a grifter.
I disagree.
Okay. Oh, by the way, so now all of a sudden you're defending Cedar when he calls me a grifter. You don't defend.
First of all, I've never heard him call you a grifter.
He's called me every fucking name in the book.
Okay.
He's a low rent grifter.
Stop.
Okay, no, I'll tell you, I'll out him right now. When we were in Vegas together, when we were in the same network, he starts attacking Jimmy Dore. And I say, "Hey, cut this shit out. I agree with you, not Jimmy. But you're attacking him in a way that is over the top and totally unnecessary and counterproductive." And you know what Sam said to me? Sam said, oh, well, he has a bigger audience than me. So if I do that, I'm going to siphon off of his audience. You know why I
Oh, shit.
right, and he is wrong.
Fucking tea.
To hear my truth.
Dropping tea.
But you agree. But you agree with him.
And I told him not to do it.
But you agree with him that Jimmy Dore is
no. This was pre-Jimmy going full right wing, full lunatic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, but
on that particular issue they were debating about, I agreed with Sam and not Jimmy. I don't mind him saying, hey, I don't agree with Jimmy. What I minded is him saying, oh, Jimmy is terrible and bad intent and blah blah blah. But brother, he hasn't even done that yet.
He disagrees with Jimmy Dore on this particular whichever
he
issue.
Did it with
what
bad
was it on?
Intent, Haas.
What was it on?
He says, I don't even remember. It's irrelevant. What he says is he literally told me I tried.
And by the way, when it comes to this kind of shit, I just want to be completely clear. If Cenk is debating some pro-Israeli genocide war criminal defender, I'm on the other end of that being like, oh, he did well that, you know, I like we have our disagreements, but I'm glad he did that. But when he's going after like trans people because he refuses to learn a single thing, then obviously on the other end, I'm going to be like, hey, by the way, this is wrong. Fundamentally, it's incorrect. I don't give two fucks about the whole like, but you're damaging the one true left. This is how the left cannibalizes it. Like, who gives? We're entertainers. This is a show. You're watching a show on the internet. They both have a show on the internet. You're watching another show on the internet. You're watching a show on the internet right now, right? Like, no one's above criticism.
They don't.
Why did Kamala
You're
Harris
out of your
say,
mind.
Why did Kamala Harris in 2019 say on tape that transgender detainees should get surgery if they're undocumented immigrants? She said it because there was hold on, Haas, let me finish. Because there was enormous pressure. There was enormous pressure from the radical left to say, oh yeah, you got to be pro-transgender detainee immigrant surgery. You have to, otherwise you're not left enough. And she's an idiot. She doesn't have any thoughts in her head. She was like, okay, I'll adopt that position. And it was because of the extreme left that she adopted that position because she's an empty vessel.
That was already a policy under Trump, just to be clear. Under Trump's administration, the whole gender assignment for prisoners thing was already taking place. This is ridiculous.
With bad instincts and did not have a good way to communicate what she would have done differently for trans people, okay, to fucking Majority Report and any number of different like extreme leftist outlets that literally get a fraction of the views that I get in this regard. Like, no disrespect to them, but like, all of us combined do not have the same motion. You're talking about the special interest
groups. You never
groups.
fight them, so nobody knows. Everybody thinks you're extreme left. Everybody thinks that you're the woke left extraordinaire, right? So like, and why do they think that?
Dude, he's had his mind complete. I haven't seen right wingers like melt down this much over trans people like in a while. In a long time, actually. Just start going off about them and that, like, this is the extreme left that told all of us that we should care about trans issues, and then they agreed, and the Democrats decided to do the trans bathroom bill, and that's why we lost. And it's like, what the fuck? That was already a policy under Trump. This was a marketing. You got this ad worked on you. He's the only person I can see this ad really, really worked on.
The diversity of different opinions. And there are moments where I will yell at a chatter, but outside of that, in terms of the finite amount of time we have spending, I find it more productive to spend it focusing on the actual people who hold the levers of power rather than people who I'm aligned with almost entirely, whether it be yourself with some very major disagreements or even same-seater and the like.
But
that's
Haas, you're making it sound like
presenting
yourself,
yourself,
just have a difference of agreement.
No, presenting yourself as
but we don't
an
have,
intellectual.
Haas,
presenting yourself as the opposite of these people, okay, serves no purpose. It just only makes you look like you're the moderate voice in here, and they're the extreme voices and whatever.
That's true, though.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just make your argument and move on and focus on the things that do matter.
Listening to them because they're the ones that's because look,
because
intent matters, Haas. Intent matters. Look, you know how many people disagree with me in Young Turks hosts? So I had this giant same exact debate we were having about the trans ad with Jordan Ewell and with Jules Sulzdev. I can't. This is the one time I get it wrong, Jules. I love those guys. Francesca's in our network. I disagree with them all the time. We have the debates on air. There's nothing wrong with those debates. That's wonderful. No problem at all. Where I draw the line is bad intent.
Yeah, when I have disagreements with any number of different people on any other networks, I say ultimately I don't care. We are aligned in this fight. We care about protecting undocumented immigrants. We care about protecting trans people. And I'm not going to pay too much attention to this because ultimately, I don't give a shit if there are disagreements. I have disagreements with my friends all the fucking time. Ultimately, if I think someone is almost entirely aligned with me on a lot of these key issues, then I see no reason.
And they call you a Nazi and a grifter. You say, okay, fuck it.
It doesn't matter. People call me. Yes.
Okay,
People
no
call
problem.
me
We
all
have
of it.
Okay,
I think it's ridiculous that
but
if it's coming from the right,
Haas,
if it's coming from the right, then you can use that as an
let's get
opportunity
back
to
to
show
politics.
why they're fucking ridiculous.
No, but let's get back to politics. So why does anybody think we're extreme, right? Why does anybody think the left is extreme? Because they have a whole bunch of hosts that they could point to and thought leaders and people online.
Yeah, myself included.
Right, that they point to and they go, look at these extreme positions that they have. So that taints the rest of the left. And that is counterproductive, it's unfair, and it's inaccurate. So stop pretending the most.
Also, by the way, like this only makes sense in his own weird, completely mind poisoned version of reality if you think that he is like the arbiter of the left. And that he himself is representing the left at all times. Otherwise, this is absurd.
This
The
is why I
moderates
said this is the
decide the
sister
elections.
soldier.
The independents
This
decide
is-
the elections.
this is why-
and you're losing that battle.
This is why I said this is a sister soldier moment where you're like identifying someone to your left that is more extreme than you to show everybody how moderate you are. And there's no reason to do
show
that.
them how moderate Democratic voters are.
There's no
because
reason-
they brainwash
there's no
people
reason to
into
do that.
thinking that Democratic voters are lunatics. Who, by the way, okay, let's argue this: that no crime exists.
There's no reason to do
crime
that.
Crime is great.
There's no reason to do that.
Crime is wonderful.
You want to know why there's no reason to do that? Donald Trump is president. You never see Republicans do that, even if they do actually disagree. Even if they do actually disagree, it doesn't matter. There's no reason. There's no reason to ever turn around and be like, I disagree with these people.
You're 100% wrong on this. So let's look at California. So you say it doesn't matter.
I gotta pee real
electorally.
quick. You can keep going. We'll talk about crime in a second. Go ahead.
Okay.
I gotta pee.
All right. So look, guys. I want to respond to him, so I want to wait till he gets back. But so I'll say it this way. Number one, the thing Haas is right about is there's so much more that we agree on than we disagree on. And that is why I get mad when people pretend that the disagreements are the only things that matter. So I'm not the one pretending that. The people that attacked us said, how dare you disagree?
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get him to bring me on. I'm like, bring me on. Let me talk to him right now.
So now you have to fall back in line and you have to start calling, women this and that, and you have to say that trans people should be getting the free surgeries and be able to play in professional sports. And if you don't, you're not really on the left. And in fact, Cenk, I get this argument all the time. You have the biggest left-wing network, so you have a responsibility.
You're
to
not.
Agree with us.
Hassan is.
Well,
you're on the biggest left wing
I have a
network.
responsibility to agree with you. No, I have a responsibility to represent my audience. I have a responsibility to represent the left in an accurate way and to represent Democrats in an accurate way. I don't have a responsibility to take the most extreme positions because somebody decided that they, having not voted on it at all, representing the most tiny sliver of Democratic voters.
It's just so funny that he's actually been gifted being on the biggest left-wing network live right now. That's what's happening, and talking about how he is the biggest fucking left-wing
to the left, not to the right. So look, at any time you go on Young Turks, you'll see disagreement all the time. There's nothing wrong with disagreement. There's something wrong with saying that if you don't have the most extreme position, that you're not really on the left and you're a right-wing grifter and blah, 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 blah. So let's do crime. So
let's do crime.
Did crime have, you and I had a huge debate about it, and you thought it's not going to affect elections, and it obviously did affect elections, Haas. So, I mean, here in California, first of all, Donald Trump picked up 10 counties overall. He closed the gap.
Hasan looking good. You're not supposed to say that. Didn't you hear what he was talking about? He's like, they only like you because you're good looking. That's the reason they all like you. I think You know what? I think his mind's kind of warped from the internet. He's one of those people who's like, it's not healthy for him to be on the internet, even though it's his job. And then that day where Hasan posted that picture of him in his underwear, I think because he saw it so many times, he must have been like, this is why they like him. They like the underwear photos. That's what this is about. Well, we have to get in our underwear. We have to fight. We have to flex.
Perception is important. And narrative in many instances is more important than the truth, right? We agree with that, especially in this day and age.
So framing matters a tremendous amount. We agree.
Yeah, framing matters a tremendous amount, and also narrative is more important than the truth. I think this is something that you would agree with as well.
Then again, you get into short run, long run, but yeah, it's super important.
It is. I mean, this is a
narrative. This is super
almost
important.
This is almost a callback to the Alan Lichtman conversation, right? Like disinformation played a big role.
But you understand why this is ridiculous to be like, well, you prove my point. Your point is that the radical left, a small amount of smaller leftist streamers who have infinitely smaller audiences than Hasan, were able to convince everyone the left is wild and just lost their minds and pushing for things that just aren't politically popular. And that's why. It's pushing for trans rights that much. You went too far. Like, that's absolutely absurd.
Consumption by 73% last time I checked. It's an insane number, right? So in that process, I think something that fell apart for the Democrats and their unwillingness to actually fight back and counter message on anything because they're cowardly was the issue of crime. There's been a lot of analysis on why crime rates have gone down historically, and they have completely rebounded and are trending downwards once again, as they have since the 90s, which I know you're going to get mad at, but hold on. And that most surveys conducted on the matter show that Americans think that their neighborhoods, and the crime has not increased in their neighborhoods, but actually crime has increased elsewhere. So why do they think that they're safe in their neighborhoods, but they still feel like crime is exploding in the country? I think it is because of the right-wing misinformation faucet that is completely dominating independent media and completely dominating even major newspapers, and that everyone is constantly in a holding pattern on whatever Republicans decide is the major point that they want to argue for. And because the Democratic Party basically operates as controlled opposition against them, they just sit there, they wait for the next talking points to come out so they can do a terrible job trying to address any of the truths of the matter, and they just get dominated over and over again. There's a second part of this, though. It's what you see, right? Now, not only have all of these, not only has the crime rate actually gone down, and I think you recognize that as well, the National Crime Victimization Survey does not show like a major blip in unreported crimes. There is definitely more unreported crimes than before, and we can address why that's happening as well. But overall, the real reason why I think a lot of people see crime everywhere, and especially in cities, in my opinion, even though Republican and red states have significantly higher rates of crime than states like California do, the reason why most people fall into this trap of assuming that California is a crime-ridden shithole as opposed to like a place like Alabama or a place like South Carolina, despite the fact that they have higher rates of crime and including violent crime than California does, is because narrative is more important than the actual truth. Also, the reason why Californians themselves genuinely believe that this is also happening and no one is addressing it,
because it's actually happening.
No, it's because of what they perceive to be what they perceive to be is disorder and dysfunction and crime that is happening in every orifice of blue cities.
So
it's homeless, it's poverty, it's visible aspects of extreme poverty that in many instances can actually be a crime or will sometimes be criminalized. Homelessness, trash on the streets. You see someone doing drugs on the corner of the street.
Extreme left positions that have fucked us.
This is Gavin Newsom, the extreme leftist.
But he does agree with you guys.
No,
he was
he
on
doesn't.
your side on Prop
Gavin
36.
Newsom.
He was
Gavin
on your
Newsom,
side on Prop 36.
The person who physically went and cleared a homeless
But
encampment is
only
on my
after he
side.
encouraged them for 3 to 4
yeah,
years
but then-
straight.
No,
because
okay,
he
but
thought
then he
you guys
wasn't-
were
You
right.
and I are in
It's
agreement if
radical
we
left.
fucking hate Gavin Newsom, but maybe not on the same fucking basis. I hate Gavin Newsom because he refused time and time again, despite numerous ballot measures that wanted to fix one of the most significant, most consequential aspects of why homelessness persists in a state like California. He refused to do it because he's backed by the same fucking corporate investors that say, do not fix the housing market. Do not touch the housing market at all. Housing costs must always go up. The number one reason why homelessness persists, the number one reason why homelessness exists is because people get priced out of the market. When people get priced out of the market, they start living in their fucking cars. When you start living in your car, you no longer have access to running water. You can't clean yourself. You lose your job. Your job attainment goes away. When you lose your job, you fall further down that pit until you arrive at the homeless guy that has been traumatized by fucking living outside and looks like a crazy person, is probably fucking experiencing significant mental health complications and doing drugs to fucking self-medicate in that process. And everyone sees that and goes, that's crime. Why is no one fixing this?
No.
And that is the major issue. It's not.
Can
It's
I haven't gotten in here in like 20 minutes. So let me address crime.
Oh, first of all, you've
Okay.
definitely talked a lot more than me. I've given you all the space.
Okay, listen. So let me address crime, then we'll get to homelessness. So on crime, you have to separate out national numbers from local numbers. Why? Because Tennessee didn't do the same things as California and New York did. So you have to look at, okay, when they tried different things, how did it work out? So the national numbers are totally irrelevant. So when you get to California, I looked it up this morning because I knew we were going to have this discussion. So pre-pandemic to now, violent crime up 15%, homicide up 15%. By the way, crime is complicated. Not every number goes up and down in the way that you would expect, or goes up all at once or goes down all at once.
What year
So,
to
for
year are you
example,
comparing?
2019 to now, okay? So like because we did a lot of the reforms in 2020, okay? But it's also complicated because the pandemic actually drove crime as well. So there was a number of different factors that in. But did crime go up? You're saying no, it's just a narrative. It didn't really go up, but it did.
No.
So
crime,
violent crime went up 15%, homicide went up 15%.
and it's
Hold
gone
on, let me
down.
finish. Well, no. This is overall last 4 years, okay? So yeah, it was spiked in 2020,
Yes.
2020 and 2021.
Yes.
Then it started to slowly come down, and last year it came down a little bit. But now, where is it? It's still 15% higher than when we started on violent and crime and homicide. And from where we started, it's now up 29% on retail theft, 43% on auto theft, and 52% on car accessories.
Anyone have links to
Those
this?
are real.
I don't
People
trust the
feel
thing he
that.
says anymore.
Everybody's
He's
had
got
their
right-wing
catalytic
brain.
converter stolen. Everybody's dealt with minor crime
Everyone's got
that
their
wasn't an
Cadillac
issue before, but is
convertibles.
an issue now. Those numbers are real. So when you say to them, "Oh no, it's just a narrative," and they're like, "God damn it, man! My uncle got robbed, and I go to the CVS and I can't
More
get a goddamn
Cadillacs.
toothpaste." You're saying
More
CVS,
Cadillacs.
imagine that bullshit, right? And so when you are telling them, don't believe your lying eyes, don't believe the numbers, you should believe me, it's just a false narrative, they don't believe you, and they were right. And so when you saw in the elections, it wasn't that the right wing tricked the people of California. And Haas, this is so important because in 2020, they tried a ballot measure that was very similar to Prop 36, okay, to repeal Prop 47, which is what reduced penalties, right? And it failed. It only got 38%. Why? Because the people had not yet felt the crime, okay? And
When you
after
feel it
2020, when the
in your
crime
soul.
actually went up, they felt the crime, they experienced the crime, and they voted against the crime. None of that was narrative. It was real, and it had a massive effect.
There's nothing that can be done to please Cenk. Well, like, I think what encapsulates this the most is when he just told him, he's like, yeah, but like, you know, they're not like the left in the way you're saying it. He's like, I know, I am. And it's like, no, you're not. None of us are. We're entertainers. That's the fucked up thing about all this. To be like, no, I get to dictate what is or what is not the left. And the radical left have destroyed this and destroyed the party, destroyed the election. No, they haven't. We don't have control. If you want to talk about the progressives, the radical left, the socialists, the communists, they're not deeply intertwined within the American system. They don't have representation. They barely have small, electoral victories in like, local communities and shit like that. But at the end of the day, we're a bunch of people who are entertainers on the internet trying to advocate for a better world. Ideally, I hope. And if someone just all of a sudden, like, he's like, oh, all they ever do is call me Nazis and shit on me. I was like, okay, first off, never once called the guy a Nazi. Ever. Never called him a Nazi. Never used that term. Never been like, yeah, he's a Nazi using Nazi rhetoric. Hey, Goebbels, fucking shit like that. Second, like, at the end of the day, when it comes to, like, what we're all talking about, if he's debating someone on Piers Morgan, who happens to be a warmonger, some pro-Israeli guy who's doing, like, apologia for fucking genocide and war crimes, I don't sit there being like, well, normally I would agree with Cenk here, but, you know, at the end of the day, he happens to be completely wrong because he said a bad thing about trans people once. No, I'm going to be like, oh, okay, he did really good in that debate. I'm glad that he went on someone's platform to actually argue against genocide. That's actually a positive thing. Awesome. But he just blanket statements, like the shit he's saying about Sam Cedar right now and the Majority Report, and then being like, I got tea. You want to hear tea? Sam Cedar's actually a grifter who said that he's only actually doing this to get people's audiences and stuff like that. It's like, did Sam say a mean thing about you once? But, like, as you always say, agrees with you 90% of the time, advocates for the same things as you 90% of the time. I've in the past been like, Hasan had a bad take on issue X that I disagree with. That's what happens. Hasan said the same thing about me before, by the way. Yeah, I disagree with the Serfs on this because fundamentally there's going to be individual things that, like, no one's above a fucking call out. You're turning this into a whole, like, I am the one true leftist, Highlander rules. There can be only one. And then, yeah, well, obviously it's going to appear as if the whole world's against you when it's not.
Happening because normal Americans, when they go into a store and they do self-checkout, which is more beneficial for corporations because now you don't have to pay benefits for cashiers. Now you don't have to, you know, pay a whole bunch of people to actually sit at the fucking cash register. Now you don't have to do workers' comp. Now you don't have to do paid, family leave or anything like that, or no health care. Now you just have an automated machine that one person is controlling every now and then. In that process, they realized that shrink would actually go up, because people would just go in and maybe put a Snickers bar in there and toss it in their bag. That is why shrink went up.
No,
okay?
Haas,
that is the real reason why shrink went up, or on the theft side, okay?
Two things can be true at the same time. So that point about shrinkage and automation is absolutely right. And the right wing totally ignores that. You are right to bring it up. But that doesn't mean that the actual theft at the retail level didn't happen. Number one, the numbers indicate that it happened. Number two, the idea that CVS, Walgreens, all these guys were just decided to pretend that the people were going to steal this stuff and start locking it up when they weren't actually stealing it is crazy. They were actually stealing it. No, people, that's why they locked it up.
I know.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, but
okay. So both of those things are true.
You can't make up for billions of dollars in lost revenue.
But when people go to a CVS and that shit's locked up, they get super mad.
I know, and it goes back to literally the same exact thing that we were talking about with respect to seeing homeless people and being like, this is crime. Crime is everywhere, and instilling a sense of panic.
But crime is everywhere, and look. So now let's go to homeless.
But you're talking about organized retail theft when this conversation has already, like, we've closed the book on that. That, like, CEOs and CFOs have openly,
before we go to homeless people. But look, let's talk about the substance. Let's talk about the substance.
They've openly said that they lied about it. Like,
no.
Yes, they did. This article is literally that.
Maybe. Look, you're cherry picking.
I'm not.
And you're getting to a point that they admitted something that they did wrong that I agree with you on. But I'm telling you that two things can be true at the same time. What you're pointing out is definitely right. They've also admitted many other things. They also admitted that they drove up pricing during inflation because they were price gouging and they were taking profits. They bragged about in their shareholder meetings. That is absolutely right. But the crime is also
nice. He put on the article that I just sent him.
The substance of the actual laws. I voted yes on Prop 36. Did you vote no on Prop 36?
Prop 36 was the increasing the penalties. Yeah,
I just sent Hasan this article.
So we have a disagreement. Yeah. So what were the penalties? They said for theft under $950, if you've done it 3 times. Then we're going to move it to a felony instead of a misdemeanor. Yeah. I totally agree. Okay.
I disagree.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's because.
Do you want to know why I disagree? Do you care?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah.
So a couple things. This also goes back to narrative over.
I know. I feel like I'm ghost debating
more
Cenk
important
right
than
now.
truth. If I were to tell you that the state of Texas has less stringent rules on what constitutes a felony theft than the state of California, which has implemented the $900 policy since like 2014, and it's not a recent introduction into California state law, would you be surprised to find that out?
But those two things are crossed together, Huss, because when everybody talks about how California changed the laws and now you can go steal things that are under $950 all day long and it's a misdemeanor, and since it's a misdemeanor, they're going to plead you down to nothing. You publicize that, then everybody goes, shit, let's go steal some stuff because apparently it's totally fine now, and more people go and steal. So that is where the reality meets the narrative.
So you're saying that the media coverage over this has led to an increase of people going out and stealing stuff.
Both things are true. That the laws were changed, it did make it easier to steal, and then the media covered it, and then more people stole because the media covered it, and they're like, oh, turns out you can just steal and get away with it.
So you and I agree that, like, I'm not saying that no theft has occurred. Of course, it did. We've all seen the videos, right? You and I, on the other hand, do agree that the larger, more...
By the way, he's the media. That's one of the things I point out when they're always doing these stories on crime. They hyper-focus. TYT, both Cenk and Anna, hyper-focus on very scary stories that no one's on the other side of. I'm not on the other side. I'm not like defending the mad stabber, the dude who was like jizzing all over the streets, or that other guy who was like fucking doing that weird ass shit. Like, no one's on the other side of that. But when he hyper-focuses on that story, it makes everyone afraid. You get really scared. You're like, holy shit, what? Some dude is running around and he's from Venezuela and he's stabbing people in the face? There's some guy in New York who's just punching women in the face, punching grandmas in the face? Lefties, are you on the side of this? Are you on that side? It's like, when you keep reporting on every single individual story that is, yes, horrifying, obviously people are going to be like, that's bad. I don't like this. It makes everyone terrified. You sit in your house and you're like, holy shit, what do we got to do? What's the only solution to this? The only viable solution, honestly, those radical lefties, they'll tell you to defund the police, but it's the only thing that stands in the way of the mad stabber, of the mad jizzer, of the mad fucking whatever. And it's like, well, now everyone is really afraid and they want to spend a whole bunch more money on police. A budget that's already hyperinflated when a lot of minorities are suffering under the terrorism of the fucking police. And so all you do is push into this, and over and over and over it goes.
Expensive. They're getting dominated by Amazon, that has now purchased Whole Foods and is doing Amazon Fresh, and they're getting dominated by grocery delivery services. Okay, they cannot compete and maintain brick and mortar retail stores. That's why I believe one of these major chains actually went bankrupt recently. I think it was CVS or Walgreens that literally had to close all of their stores.
Yes, but we agree on all that. And I'll add on top of that, private equity buys them, and then they reduce their costs.
So
which then drives
if
a
you
vicious
understand,
cycle.
Rite Aid was the one that went bankrupt.
I understand all that, but you're not addressing the point. That can be true, while crime going up can also be true.
No, you are. I'm afraid you are laser focusing on a more like you're laser focusing on something that invokes emotion when actually 100%. Looking at the data shows that the much larger problem here, or the much, like, not even a real problem for them.
Which one is larger?
Is actually,
yes, it does.
29%. It did go up. It is real. So when you get that it's counterproductive when you keep saying things that make people think that you think that they're making it up in their head and it's not real at all.
Because I have looked at the actual numbers.
But do you see that makes them? That alienates them even more.
Okay.
You're saying even though it went up 29%, I want you to pretend that it didn't. No, and I want you to say it's.
Well, we crash it?
Not real. Well, they're not going to say it. No. And the elections prove it.
Okay. Let me give you a parallel here. The Democratic Party kept saying, right, that that the economic impact that Americans were facing was inconsequential, that the economy was good, actually. Right? They kept repeating it over and over again. And people were like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right? My anger towards the Democrats in that regard was that they basically, and I used as an example on the Pod Save America the episode that I hosted yesterday. And this is a famous tweet that I'm basically paraphrasing. If you saw a homeless person and chucked 2 pennies at them, okay, and then they yelled at you and they were like, fuck you, why are you giving me 2 pennies, piece of shit? Technically, you did improve their, material wealth by 2 pennies. Why are they being angry? Why are they angry at me for genuinely improving their material wealth by 2 pennies? You can frame every number and every percentage in a way that suits your argument. But what you have to look at is the actual data, which I have done. That's why I bring up the National Retailers Association numbers when I'm having this conversation with you about shrink increasing overall. When you say retail theft went up 29%, what you're failing to account for, and by the way, retail shrink has gone down for the record year over year.
All the numbers are better in the last year.
But the instance where it did go up, it actually went up because there was more foot traffic in comparison to the year prior. When there's more people going into the stores, there are more people who are able to steal stuff. And if you and I both agree that it's not organized retail theft that is like massively contributing to the increase in shrink, but instead it's actually automated. Automated cash registers.
But they don't care
and
about
self-checkout.
But Haas, the average guy doesn't care what is leading to CVS's declining profit.
So you're saying the average guy doesn't care about the truth?
Let me finish. What the average guy cares about is, I went to the store the other day, and I've heard this story 100 times, and they're not making it up, and it's backed up by the numbers. I went to the store the other day. Some douchebag walks in, grabs a bunch of stuff, and leaves. And then I feel like a sucker sitting here paying for it because apparently anybody can come rob this place. And that's not even.
If only it was your job and you had a very well-established network to tell people the truth and to convince them of what's actually happening then. Because that's you. You're the media. You keep talking about how the media is manipulating people. You're the media. We're all the media. That's what we do for a living. That's why when you're like, it's the radical left, you were trying to poison you all. What the fuck are you talking about? This should be your job. If you have the quote-unquote largest network on the left, he doesn't. He's on the largest network on the left. But if you have the largest network on the left, then use that to be like, by the way, the real problem when it comes to inflation happens to be corporate greed, something people don't talk about. By the way, while a lot of other people will focus on very scary stories in the media to try and get you afraid to even go into a store and shop because you think they're being overrun with minorities stealing stuff, that's just not true. It doesn't bear out in the facts. In fact, Target has closed down a lot of stores where theft was lower in New York. They closed down stores where people in those areas couldn't afford the products on a regular basis. That's why they closed down, not because of theft. They were lying. There was an overwhelming amount of evidence about that. That's why you should be doing that if you are a leftist with a megaphone. It's your job. It's what that's what we're all supposed to do, to try and spend a couple minutes offline maybe doing research and being like, wow, the mainstream media is painting one lie, one narrative. You're really easy at pointing this out when it happens to be Israel. When it happens to be like, the genocide of Palestinians, you will be like, oh wow, the mainstream media is lying to you. We have to cut through this. It's our job as people who have independent media networks to be able to tell the truth. But when it comes to fucking crime, when it comes to this one issue that you're obsessed with, or trans people, the other issue that you're obsessed with, suddenly, well, no, that's the radical left who've lost their minds. The radical left are out of control, all this kind of shit. And it's like, no, you can't pick and choose this. I know sometimes it's inconvenient, right? There's more than 3 states that matter. I know, it hurts. It hurts the brain to try and wrap your head around that and be like, I guess there is more than 3 states that matter. It was just so easy, to the water and the gas and then but now my entire worldview has been changed with liquid hot magma.
And to make up for that massive gap in the data, by saying, oh, people are simply not reporting crimes when we're talking about.
But I'm telling you, the data does back it up. I've proven it overwhelmingly.
I don't know.
And then on top of that, there's another mountain of unreported crime. But I don't even need the unreported crime. The crime went up.
I don't know where your data is coming from.
Public Policy Institute of California.
Right-wing echo
so you can look it up.
Right-wing echo chambers.
Crime on the cars. 43% on auto theft over the last 4 years. Yeah. 52% on car parts. And you keep telling them it didn't happen when their catalytic converter got stolen. They know what happened. Now let's go to homelessness. So that's again like the trans ad at the end of the campaign. It's in my opinion, it's a combination.
The Public Policy Institute of California, is that what you're talking about? Is that where you got this information from?
Yeah.
California's violent crime rate rose somewhat in 2023 and remains above pre-pandemic levels. This is what you're talking about, right?
So look, keep going down. You see,
okay.
Right? So
California's overall violent crime rate by 1.7 increased by 1.7 from 495 crimes in 2020 to 503 in 2023.
Yep.
Like the rest of the nation, California saw a jump in violent crime in the first year of the pandemic. The state's violent crime rate is still up by 15.4% compared to 2019. This is what you're talking about.
Exactly what I said. 15% since 2019.
Okay.
And then you see violent crime, you see homicide, you see home burglaries go down, but
So this is
commercial
from- this is from-
burglaries go up.
This is from
495 per 100,000 to 503. Again, the numbers, while he is technically correct here, is not representational of an overwhelming problem in which, like, you now need to be afraid of this. We're talking about per 100,000 residents in this area.
Now, all the numbers are much worse.
Okay.
Oh, no, not all the numbers, almost all the numbers. So
did he get his car stolen? Why is he like this? I don't know. I've had, when I was like a 16-year-old and I spent every waking dollar on the shittiest ass car ever just to get it like with a decent sound system because I thought that's what would make women like me. I had my car broken into. It fucking sucked. I didn't wake up the next morning and be like, you know what we need to do? We need to fucking liquidate the poor. Like that wasn't my fucking reaction to it. I was just like, oh fuck, that sucks.
Left. There is no corporate left, corporate Democrats, right? And they, what I would call the extreme left, get together. And so you're absolutely right. Gavin Newsom wants to protect his real estate donors who are among his top 2 donors, right? He wants housing prices to keep going up because the real estate guys get paid off of that. Number 2, he wants to has a ton of donors that they dole out and allies that they dole out money to nonprofit groups. They dole out money to, we're going to buy that place and we're going to turn it into housing for the homeless. Except they never turn it into housing for the homeless. They just pay 3 times as much to buy the property.
Can I say something?
All of that stuff is true, but 2 things can be true at the same time. At the same time, on the city council level, in LA and San Francisco and Oakland, when anybody went to say, hey, listen, I don't think we should have people shooting up in public. I don't think we should do the local
This is such a good
meth market
Cenksgiving.
in the
By
middle
and
of
far the
town.
best one.
The extreme left would show up, the political activists. They literally threw a brick at London Breed. They thought she wasn't extreme enough.
Also,
and they're like,
I gotta say, I'm so happy that I'm a VIP on this channel because you actually see everything I type pop up in here. And I know he has to read it and he gets so mad about it.
they have freedom to stay on the streets.
We don't care about this. We're looking at the data. Data is more important than whatever people are saying. Okay. What you're doing in this circumstance, when you look at the data here, okay, I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to open this image in a new tab and I'm going to zoom in. Okay.
Yeah, he does sound like the ancient alien guy.
What you're doing in this situation is basically looking at just this portion.
Because that is what the voters look at when they're going into this
and not
election.
looking at, I know, but you're not looking at the overall trends of crime.
I know, but I've pointed that out 1,000 times.
I know, but
that trend that happened in the 1990s has nothing to do with the trend since
it's
2020.
It's not just 1990s. Like
it's since 1960.
Since 2000, okay, crime has noticeably decreased and continues
but no one
to do
disagrees
so.
with that, Haas.
Okay. So when you say there's a blip and what we have to do is basically engage in even more rigorous enforcement in a state that has literally by the Supreme Court in the past been told to reduce the number of people that are in their prison system because the prisons are filled to the brim with a bunch of nonviolent offenders with no indication that they're going to reoffend.
But that's not what has happened at all.
Saying that
these are recidivists, Haas. That's why Prop 36 fixes the problem of recidivism.
So
if you've done it 3 times, brother, you're a recidivist.
See, this is
right?
where we totally completely disagree with one another. If you think that like the 3 strikes rule in any sort of implementation of like
it goes from misdemeanor to felony. Absolutely.
More aggressive prosecution and more draconian punishments being implemented are a demonstrable failure universally. That's the reason why America has a higher rate of recidivism than all of the other comparable OECD nations that have significantly more tolerant approaches and significantly better solutions in terms of identifying why crime happens, which is poverty.
You're conflating 2 different issues.
I'm not.
You got mentioned by name twice. What was the second time? I saw the first one where I was like, it's only a matter of time for Cenk to go on that show where he's not going to like just lose his mind and mention me because he blames me and all these other like lefties for like destroying it. If you have a clip of the other one, send it to me. I'd love to watch it.
when you say, hey, if you do this 3 times, 4 times, 8 times, 9 times, I'm still going to keep it a misdemeanor. That doesn't have anything to do with the state of our prisons. I'm not telling you to.
Does.
No, hold on. I'm not
That's
telling
the reason why they're
hold
doing
on.
it.
I'm not telling you to beat those guys. I'm not telling you to torture those guys. I'm not telling you to put them in jail for the rest of their lives. This is not 3 strikes and you're out. This is 3 strikes and it's a felony, brother. It's a felony. You're saying 18 strikes. That motherfucker goes into the store, robs it 18 times, and you're still going to call it a misdemeanor?
Do you agree with the crime bill now of Joe Biden, the architect of the crime bill, like crime control bill? That was a successful method.
So that is a complicated calculus. Because back
now
then,
it's nuanced.
What they would do is, they would say, and this is what I hated, and this is the criminal justice reform that I wanted, which is, oh, you smoked marijuana. That's it. We're putting you in prison for 20 years. What the? No, I don't agree on marijuana.
That's not what I asked. That's not what I asked.
No, but you're asking me a bill that has all these different parts. Some parts I agree with, and some parts I don't agree with.
I'm asking you a very specific component of the bill, 3 strikes law, which means that
if 3 strikes and you're out forever. No, I don't agree with that.
Okay. So, but you do agree.
That's a life sentence. Okay. I'm not saying that. This is 3 strikes
but you do
and
agree
it's a felony.
But you do agree in adding more aggressive, adding like a felony attachment,
more aggressive punishment.
Okay,
not brutal punishment, not weirdo torture punishment, but normal aggressive punishment.
Okay,
to
why
recidivists.
Why don't you agree with the 3 strikes law on principle?
Because it's too draconian and it doesn't match proportionally the crime. Because your 3rd strike, like happened in Louisiana, was a guy who stole a slice of pizza, got a life sentence. No, that's disproportionate. When you smoke marijuana and they give you a life sentence or 20 years or 10 years or even 1 day, that's disproportionate.
So for you, it's $900.
So we want a criminal justice reform to bring us back into moderation, not to bring it back to a different extreme, the opposite extreme.
Okay. So
mass incarceration in the U.S. had been rising since the 1970s due to policies like the war on drugs and mandatory minimums. The 1994 crime bill reinforced this trend by incentivizing states to pass harsher laws. Many states implemented stricter sentencing policies that disproportionately affected Black and Latino communities. African American and Latinos were already overrepresented in the prison system before 1994. The bill exacerbated this by increasing penalties for crimes more commonly persecuted for minority communities, such as drug offenses. Funding for police led to more aggressive policing in urban areas where minorities were likely to live, resulting in higher arrests and higher incarceration rates. And we're talking about $9.7 billion being allocated for prison and $13 billion for hiring more police officers. Like, fuck this. In what world is this suddenly like, oh, well, this one's nuanced. I gotta say this now. We gotta chill. This is a nuanced topic, actually.
With the voters.
Okay, so the reason why I have a different approach to this than you, I think, is because I understand the state of the California prison structure, and I understand that California already has some pretty fucking awful and draconian punishments that they implement. And that is the disagreement here. I understand that the crime apprehension method, the best possible way to reduce crime is by improving some of the most consequential aspects that cause people to go and do crime. I don't think that people do crime because they're like evil people. I think they do it because in the overwhelming majority of circumstances, they are a victim of their material conditions. They're a victim of circumstance.
No, you're going too far.
Wait, what do you mean?
So does poverty contribute to crime? Of course it does.
Okay.
So when the right wing says, oh, no, it's just like evil, demon-possessed people and their socioeconomic condition has nothing to do with it, that's absurd. Of course, poverty causes crime to some degree. But you're taking a macro issue and applying it to a micro case. So when the guy goes in and
that's what you do
in the
all the time.
Brick, that's not because his material conditions were problematic. That guy's got mental issues, okay? And so and you got to lock that guy up, or he's going to hit another one.
God, heaven forbid that someone actually look at a single, say, edge case and then use that to propagate fear to an entire group of people. Heaven forbid. That would be wild. I would hate to see that. Yeah, terrible stuff.
Recidivism greatly. It gets you to a better result. So you should do all those things that I agree with you on, but you should also say, no, on an individual level, if you keep committing crime, I don't think it's because you're an angel that just got misdirected and you're Jean Valjean and you stole a loaf of bread because your sister's kid needed it. No, you're a guy who thinks I can get away with crime, so I'm going to do more crime. If you think that doesn't exist, you're in La La Land. Of course, people are human. They respond to incentives and disincentives. And when you say there's now no punishment, in effect, it's not real. Misdemeanor is real punishment, but unfortunately, because it gets pled down to almost nothing, it becomes in effect no punishment. Of course, normal human beings are going to react by going, okay, I guess it's illegal to steal now.
Okay, but since I thought we established this basis that in terms of retail theft being like you're pairing up numbers that don't actually add up to a hyper specific anecdote of a serial criminal that you've made up in your mind. You're making
I'm not
it
making
seem
it up.
as,
It's in the numbers.
no, it's not in the numbers because we disagree. I think the broader the broader scope of this analysis requires you to look at the actual ways in which retail theft is occurring and what is the actual contributor to the problem.
A huge percentage of the crime is committed by recidivists. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but you guys could look it up.
No,
So
but in the
my
grand scheme
point
of things,
is-
it's not one. There is no world in which one singular person is responsible, or 1,000 people are responsible for the brunt of
When
the
you
overwhelming
say-
majority of shrink,
when you
overwhelming
say-
majority of retail theft.
When you say, Haas, that there's almost no consequences for theft under $1,000, you will get more people stealing under $1,000. That's the most obvious thing in the world, and that's exactly what happened. So you
No, that's not
keep
what happened.
You keep pointing out a different problem, and I'm telling you, yeah, that's also true. That's
No,
also true.
that's not what
But
happened.
Did
We-
crime
you
go
and
up?
I-
Yes.
you and I are-
So you're saying that if there's no 3 strikes on moving into a felony, that it's not going to affect people at all. Are you actually saying that?
There is no world in which people are actually contributing to the retail theft in a meaningful fashion because they're constantly going back and stealing.
You keep going back to retail theft. How about the catalytic converters?
Okay.
How about property crime? How about auto theft?
Fine. But the reason why I'm using retail
Catalytic
theft as an
converters. He
example is
loves
because
his
you
Cadillacs.
use it as an example.
But
And
all
it's
these
one
examples
area
are the same thing.
and
They're all
it's
going
one
up
area that I actually
because
have.
we're not punishing it.
It's one area where I have
Should we
actually
punish
looked
it?
into the data. That's the reason why
Should
I'm
we punish
using
it,
retail
or
theft.
should we say, "Oh, those poor angels"?
Crime already gets punished. That's the whole point. That's what
But
I'm
a
saying.
misdemeanor is basically not punishing.
No, that's not true. The idea that like criminals are not being punished at all in the state of
But
California
because of
is a
cash
ridiculous
bail.
lie.
No, but Haas, no, you're literally wrong here. Factually incorrect. When you have cash bail, no cash bail, combined with lowering felonies to misdemeanors, what it does is it says this is a misdemeanor. I cannot keep you in prison. There is no cash bail, so you're free to go. Okay. So
Because-
then that says to the average guy who's not a rocket scientist, because that's how he wound up stealing shit from CVS. Oh, I just stole from CVS, or I just stole your catalytic converter and they let me out. So that means I should do it again.
Again, this is just so right wing and disgusting. Like at the end of the day, the war on drugs is what starts to magnify and amplify the rate at which there's mass incarceration in the U.S., especially disproportionately towards minorities. And then the 1994 crime bill continues to exacerbate that until you start beginning you should be wanting to oppose the development of a prison state in the U.S. where 1% of the population is locked up if you are a so-called king of the left. If you're the leader of the left, you're the lord of leftism and the master of bread or whatever he calls himself, then why do you not care about this issue from a humane and, what will actually net results perspective? It sounds like you just fucking hate the poor. I'll be honest with you. It just sounds like you're a person who hates poor people, and every single respect, like when you're talking about this, it's like, well, they're stealing from fucking the Cadillac owners, my Jaguars. They're stealing all the fucking the groceries. How dare they steal groceries? It's disgusting. It's sick. Shame on them. And it's just like, well, okay, if you wanted to reduce the level of crime, then shouldn't that be what we talk about? And why have they ever done a segment on wage theft, corporate crime, like the real fucking thieves in society, the ones who get away with it all? Like corporate greed increasing the cost of inflation, all that shit just goes by while we just sit there being afraid of fucking minorities because we see all these stories where it's like Venezuelans have come into the country and they're actually murdering people. Oh my God, there's a whole bunch of black people stealing from Target. Look at this. It's very, very frightening. Oh my God. And you're just like, but is this indicative of society? Like, or is this just what you hyper focus on to keep everyone fucking scared because you're scared? Because you're scared to walk down the streets of LA, because you don't like seeing homeless people, because you don't like seeing poor people, because it pisses you off. And then you're like, oh, fucking crime's out of control. I can't wait to do a story when I get home. I'm gonna do a fucking story about how the Venezuelans are coming here, stealing everything.
In a state where
They changed the law.
The penalties.
Haas. It can't
in
be
a
the
state,
same process if
in
they
a
change
sta-
the law.
No, the process is
Oh, it's a
still
joke.
the
I'm
same.
joking.
They just shortened the sentences in a state where sentences are already so fucking long. We're talking about
They're eating
people
the Cadillac
who are going to spend 30 years in prison, and they've
And
spent
why
20
were they going to
years.
spend
It's
30
Cadillac
years
And
in
they've
prison?
spent 20
Why
years.
were they going to spend 30 years? Because they stole pizza? No, because they committed rape or murder.
No. Just listen. I'm using 30 as a number. I'm giving you 30. It could be 5 years in prison. Okay. They were going to spend 5 years in prison. They've spent 3 already. So now they've actually put them in front of a parole board ahead of time instead of serving out the 5 years of their prison sentence.
That's right. And they're letting them go too early. That's right. I
Well,
think they
that's
should serve
crazy.
their
They
sentences.
should serve 5 years in prison. You think the extra 2 years?
You know what the hell they got the 5 years for?
The extra
Look, guys, you can steal.
I do know. I do know. As a matter of fact, I do know.
Ad infinitum and not get a felony. A felony is 1 year or higher. To get a 5-year sentence is significant.
Okay.
And you think they all did nothing? They were all Jean Valjean, and we're just releasing
I'm not saying
them.
that. I'm not saying they're Jean Valjean. Their capacity to reoffend is not going to change dramatically between the fucking 3 years that they're being let out if the parole board finds them eligible and analyzes their capacity to reoffend in the process.
In
if
a
you
new
think that
law
those people,
where they say, but you should let them out.
no, that's not true. You're wrong. This is Fox News shit. That's why I'm so frustrated with this
So
conversation.
are they out or are they not out, Haas? Did they change the law or did they not change the law?
Because that means that there
they
was a
changed the law and now they're out.
Yeah,
What part of that is complicated?
Because that means that there's a shit ton of people that actually have been found by the exact same parole boards with no capacity to reoffend in their analysis that have actually been let out early, and they shouldn't have been in prison for that long to begin with. That's my point.
Thank you.
If you think that
So
like
they literally let out criminals that you
Oh my
think
God.
should be let out,
He
even though
keeps
you
doing
don't know
this.
any other cases.
because I don't believe in the idea that there is a major difference between someone serving a 5-year sentence and a 3-year sentence.
So you think all the sentences
if
should be
same
lower,
people-
which creates
Yes.
a disincentive, which
No, it
creates an
doesn't.
incentive for more crime.
If that was the case, then
The problem here is that Hasan hasn't seen Les Miserables, and that's why he doesn't get it. If he just watched it one time, he'd understand, right? But that's why he's just part of the radical left, and his mind's all poisoned. You know, that's really what this comes down to.
100% different than ours. If you said to me, let's go to the Norwegian model, I'd say yes in a second.
okay.
And that
but you're pushing the country in your as a massive progressive online commentator. You're
king of the left.
pushing in the exact opposite direction.
I don't want crime.
I'm saying
yes, I am.
because, but it's not a deterrence. It's not a real deterrence. It's demonstrably
Except
unsuccessful.
for the fact that it was, and the numbers went up, and
Wait,
the
what?
voters
No, it
agree with
wasn't.
me.
No,
and
the voters agreeing with you doesn't matter. We're looking at the actual. We're looking
so
at.
you think all the Democratic voters are wrong, even though the numbers prove that they are
Okay,
right.
Democratic
You
voters
think
voted for-
recidivism, repeat offenders are no big deal.
Democratic voters in the
So
primary
should we
process
do
voted for
anything
Joe
to repeat
Biden.
offenders?
Democratic voters voted in the primary process for Joe Biden. Do you think that the country would be worse off without Medicare for all or not?
So Haas, there is both of those. We talked about this already. Both the reality and the narrative have an effect. Okay. So sometimes the narrative that is wrong pushes things over the edge and makes a difference. And so that's why the Joe Bidens of the world win, because they have
Cenk doesn't use Blue Sky, so I can't do it on there. But I challenged him on Twitter to try and bring me on the show. I don't know if he'll do. I doubt he'll do it now. But maybe he'll bring me on to TYT so I could yell at him about why he is actually the one true leftist.
and then they think that it exists when it's poor people who just are innocent and angels.
I'm
and
not
they
even-
didn't do anything wrong. But all of the
My
people
angels.
in the Democratic Party in California, let alone the Republicans, all got brainwashed into thinking that there's real crime when there isn't. But you're wrong on the facts.
No, you've been proven wrong like 6 or 7 times in a row. Every single time that you bring something up, it's like, hey, by the way, apparently in San Francisco they were giving reparations in the form of letting black people buy houses for $1. Not true. Nothing that's happened. Don't know where you get that. That's absolutely absurd. But sure, cool. He's like, oh, well, I don't even believe that statistic that he said about the people stealing catalytic converters is true. Like something that is relatively easy to steal at the bottom of a car, or when he was getting angry about the rate of like shoplifting. That's not true either. Right?
Clean up your room.
All of this is just based on like this weird. I don't know what circle he's in.
And the proof is the American
It's not binary.
system.
It's not binary, Haas. It's not either more prisons or less prisons. shittier prisons or nicer prisons. It's what it depends. What are we doing?
It depends.
Is it a misdemeanor?
It depends
or is
at
it
the
a
end of the
felony?
day.
Is it smoking
No,
marijuana,
it
or is it
depends.
doing meth in
No,
public
it-
next to high school kids and junior high school
It depends on the
kids?
material conditions, Cenk. That's it. It depends on social safety nets. That is what it depends on more than anything else. And
I
you
love
and I
that.
agree on this. And it saddens me to see
is
that
it the
you have
weed?
given up hope, understandably, that we will ever solve the underlying material problems. So now you're just trying to burn the candle on the other end.
You can do both.
No.
Just because, well, first of all, you're not even doing either. So we're not changing any of the material conditions. The corporate Democrats and the corporate Republicans have fucked us all, right? All they do is funnel money to the rich and to the corporations. We agree on that. So we're not actually fixing any of the fundamental problems. But in the meanwhile, since we haven't fixed the fundamental problems, crime has risen. And your response to that is, maybe we'll fix the underlying problems decades from now. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to let the guy out. And I'm saying, in the meanwhile, I am not going to let the guy out.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that our prison structure and the way that we look at crime in America, culturally speaking, and in the way that we have written legislation is far more draconian. We're the #1 country for incarceration on this planet. It's worse than China. It's worse than Russia.
It's true.
Okay? That is a
1%
fact.
of the
That is an
population.
objective fact. You are looking at a system where America is 4% of the entire globe's population, but houses 25% of the entire globe's incarcerated population, and saying we need more of that. I'm saying this is a demonstrable failure, and what we have to do is fix.
It's insane. It honestly is. To see what is going on, to see the mass incarceration system of the US, to see 1% of the population, that's the biggest prison population in human fucking history. More so than the communists in the USSR, more so than North Korea, more so than any other country ever. It's been industrialized. It's been fucking put through capitalism's meat grinder. And to sit there and be like, but we need more crime. We need more people. Less recidivism. Like, no, what the fuck? How in the world are you on one end doing this where, like, I'm the king of the left, everyone should listen to me, all these radical leftists are unappealing, and that's why Democrats lose. Democrats are not leftists. They're fucking corporate liberals. They're neoliberals. They're proud adherents of capitalism. They don't want to solve the underlying problems. They want to perpetuate them because a lot of them stand to benefit greatly by keeping wealth inequality, by exacerbating wealth inequality. It's one of the reasons why they're not that upset by the concept of a fascist coming to power, because all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we thanked him. Yeah, good job, Donald Trump. I thank you. It's been great. Good job.
Or so that it's a misdemeanor. If we went and publicized at a national level, hey, you know what? In Texas, it's a misdemeanor. But again, there's differences here because they might not have no cash bail. So then those guys do get arrested and they stay in prison until their trial. So they don't get to repeat offend over and over again. But even so, if you publicize that you're going to get a misdemeanor instead of a felony, I bet you that the crime in Texas would go up because a lot of people would go, oh, misdemeanors usually gets pled down to nothing.
We're into the thought experiment.
Misdemeanor is not as big a deal. I'm much less likely to go to prison under a misdemeanor. I'll go steal more in Texas. I think the crime would go up. You think the crime would not go up if that was a well-publicized fact?
So you're saying that it's because the media hasn't covered Texas's felony distinction up until this moment.
You were saying that. You were saying the narrative makes the difference.
No, I'm saying that narrative doesn't contribute to the material reality one way or another in a way, in a more meaningful way than like people feeling the consequences of not being able to fucking make rent or not having the same job attainment, not having the same fucking living wages that they're supposed to be getting when wages are outpacing or when inflation is outpacing wages.
You're making a macro difference.
No, it's not
the guy who's doing the theft is not some sort of angel in your macro world that if he was
it's not.
rich,
I'm not saying he's an angel.
That.
I'm not saying he's an angel. I'm not making the difference between you and I think
you keep saying
in
that.
this conversation is that you're applying some semblance of like morality to the action. I'm not. I'm saying human beings are immediately reacting to their material circumstances. I'm not ascribing a moral value to that because I want to solve the problem. And I think moralizing the ways in which like people steal. Some people steal for honorable reasons like Jean Valjean, and other people steal for bad reasons because they want to be bad is silly. I look at the data, I look at the actual problem, and I want to solve the problem. And I think moralizing or
I do
trying to
moralize
dive
it.
in. And yes, and trying to dive into the mind of like one criminal over the other is actually silly. And that's not how legislation is written anyway. Because if you were to write legislation that way, when people
respond to
do,
incentives and
when people
disincentives.
do,
That's
when,
how we're built.
when people do write legislation that way, you arrive at a whole bunch of things that you disagree with as well, like in the crime control bill. You arrive at people being like, well, those evil people are smoking marijuana and marijuana kills, and that's why they have to be locked up in prison forever. That's how we arrived at 25% of the entire incarcerated population of the planet being incarcerated in the United States of America.
So look, I attribute both things. The incentives and disincentives matter. So if you say, hey, there's going to be less punishment for something, you will get more of that thing. If you say there's going to be more punishment of a thing, you will get less of that thing. If you disagree with that, you're literally disagreeing with human nature. Then on the
So you're for the death penalty then, I guess? Is that it? Is that where this is all going? Like, why not have the death penalty for everything?
we find that to be immoral and unacceptable. You are not allowed to do that. You are not allowed to take from that guy when you didn't earn it. That is an immoral act and it is an illegal act. That is literally what crime is. You're not allowed to rape that woman just because you wanted it. It is illegal and immoral. You cannot go into his house and take his shit. That is immoral and illegal. By definition, crime is about morality. Then the question is, where do we draw the lines on what we think is right and wrong? And what I'm saying to you is, I'm drawing them in a different place than you are. I'm drawing them in a place where the great majority
Yeah, like, why not tell Jean Valjean, if you steal bread, I'll cut off your dick? That's the new penalty. So, hey, you steal that loaf of bread, Jean Valjean, we're cutting off your penis. That's how it's going to be, you know? This is the new reality. And then if that doesn't work, you just go more extreme. Death penalty for everything across the board.
not allowed to. It is immoral
Do you-
to smash a woman's face with a brick, to smear shit on a woman's face. Things that people literally walked on in New York.
No Justice MTG and Kevin Logan 1875. Thank you so much for the raids. Go follow the channels. I'm just watching this live, so I got to go right back to it.
And that's why you lost California in spectacular fashion. That is exactly as I predicted. 36 passed with 70% of the vote.
Okay. I don't agree that people who engage in violent felony assault should be able to immediately
Is it a morality
walk
issue?
away. It's like in terms of letting that person walk away, you are constantly in greater danger to society. I don't agree with that.
So it is immoral.
Yes, I think that.
So crime is a morality
Yes,
issue.
but when you are legislating or when you are actually trying to figure out a way to reduce the number of crime, you can't just sit there and be like, well, that's immoral. Then, okay, then kill that person. We should kill that person.
No, you're going to an extreme.
No, I'm not going to an extreme. You're going to an extreme.
I literally told you earlier. What was my rule? What was the rule? I said it has to
I'm
be
using your
proportional.
argument and
No, it's
moving it to the
proportional.
logical conclusion, which is we should
I don't
lock
like
away that person.
extremists.
We should lock away that person permanently
No.
because that person has
No.
done a crime. That's
No,
what
that's
happens
not
when
logical at all.
That's what happens when you
punishment-
moralize.
The punishment
That's
has no, you don't. Punishment has to be appropriate and proportional to the
Okay.
crime. So
Okay.
it is not a moral position to say you stole a slice of pizza, so I'm going to take your freedom away forever. That is not a moral position. But it's also not a moral position.
But you just made the argument that if someone is going to be, if there's no crime applied, and the more that you apply punishment to a crime, the more people are going to do it. That this is the problem, and that's why it's like, well, then why not just make the most extreme punishment for everything? Why not make the death penalty? If Jean Valjean steals a piece of bread, again, kill him.
not saying that the solution is to just abolish the principle of crime, right? I'm not saying that at all. I'm
God.
simply stating that. Well, come on, Cenk.
Okay. I know.
Like,
Of course, you're not saying that.
my anger and my frustration is that we keep looking at wrong solutions and moving away from the actual, like, genuinely successful solutions in reducing the number of crimes that happen, whether it be property theft or whether it be any sort of violent crimes at all. And the example is out there in every other OECD nation. And instead of looking at that and going, this is in the direction that we need to move in, which is something that you do when it comes to Medicare for all. It's something that you do for socialized medicine, but it's for some weird reason not a thing that you factor in when it comes to the actual.
Except I do,
when
but
it comes
we
to the
don't have
actual
their
issue of
system.
crime.
I've said like 8 times I do, and I want to go towards their system, but we don't have that holistic system. We don't have the safety
not even
net. We don't
holistic.
have any of that.
I know.
We don't have the right prisons. So
But
give
but
me,
that's
give me a bill that fixes our prisons, and I'll say yes. Give me a bill that reforms police training, and I'll say yes.
Well, then why advocate for Medicare for all at all? Even as a non-American, why do it? Why advocate for anything that could potentially move us in the right direction? Why, if you're a prominent member of the media, if you have supposedly the largest leftist network on the internet, why not use it to advocate for things that then people who watch you can then tell their politicians they want? And in the case of crime, it seems like it's always the opposite. You just want to show stories that are scary, really scary stories. Oh my God, look at this guy. He's the mad stabber has been released again.
It puts him in prison for a year. A felony is a year or more.
Okay, so if someone steals three slices of pizza year.
No, 3 different instances.
Yeah, in 3 different instances.
Yeah, they are a repeat offender. You're giving the most extreme, lowest example you could find. I can give you 3. A guy smashes into a jewelry store, takes a $900 watch. He does it 340 times in a year, and you still say a felony. Okay, so we both have extreme examples. And I'm saying,
no, that's fine.
If you go and break the law 3 different times on purpose, goddamn right it's a felony.
Okay, here's why I think you and I will never see the world in the same way. I would rather have the jewelry guy go free if that means the 3-piece slice also gets to go free.
Yeah, we disagree.
Yeah, I think 100% I stand on that.
And good news is we just had an election about it, and it got decided. So
I think
that is what voters decided.
Especially,
we agree with Cenk. We're not willing to let you rob every place blind because you're worried about the 3 pizza guy.
Yeah, and the reason why I disagree with you on this is because, and it's something that you agree with me on as well, that's not even the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem would be food banks, and the solution to the jewelry theft guy.
But the food bank is not going to solve the repeat offender guy. That guy's out of control. So the repeat offenders
the
are
guy
totally
who's
out of
stealing
control.
3 pizzas.
You're taking the lowest possible.
You're taking examples that are just absurd. This is the thing that I hate about thought experiment stages of like debates and family debates, especially. It's like he can't control himself. He can't. He's got this impulse. He's got to steal all the pizza. Do you think it's the Cookie Monster? Like, does he picture the Cookie Monster as a real person? And this is the inherent danger with having perhaps prison reform, criminal justice reform, any of that. Well, but what about Cookie Monsters? We can't account for Cookie Monsters. All right. They're just going to go wild and they're going to steal all the cookies. It's in their nature.
The jewelry theft.
Oh, so my guess is, first of all, we're both guessing. And the more common thing of just going into a store and stealing whatever you want is way higher, way higher than the guy who's like, oh, I'm so hungry. I just need 1 slice of pizza. By the way, go outside a pizza shop in California, anywhere in California, LA, San Francisco, etc. Hey, brother, I don't want money. Can you buy me a slice of pizza? And that guy will buy you 8 slices of pizza.
Okay.
The next guy will buy you 8 slices.
That's not what we're talking about.
Nobody's going hungry. There's food kitchens.
That's not what we're talking about.
Soup kitchens. You can do all of that. So
I'm not talking about the morality behind theft.
What is
I'm
more
saying,
common?
what's
The
more
guy
common?
who's hungry and stole the pizza, or the guy who's like, oh shit, cool, free shit for
free shit.
Free shit. Way more common. 10,000 times.
The guy
more
who
common.
says, I want to steal. I want to go into Rite Aid and steal deodorant and shampoo or whatever, right?
Whatever.
What do you think is more common? The guy who's stealing deodorant, pizza, any number of different things, or the guy who's like facilitating a jewelry heist, a smash and grab at a jewelry store?
Now we're getting into such micro things, Hus. There's some gangs who do it on purpose. They realize, there's a loophole here. We're going to exploit that loophole. And sometimes they'll even use kids because they'll even get lighter sentences, get off easier, etc. Then there's randos who do it because they heard on the news that it's basically...
And it gets them off.
You realize why I'm asking this question? It's because when you write legislation, and I think you agree with this this principle, like when you the abortion abortion restrictions, right? There's a reason why people say this should be left between a doctor and the patient, right? Because any kind of legislative hurdle that you put in place of this routine medical process by hyper focusing on like late term abortions or 3rd trimester abortions, which is 1% of abortions overall, and in every single circumstance, it's happening because there is like a serious threat to the carrier, and not like a fun abortion that someone is having after carrying the pregnancy for 9 months. the reason why we don't want to put a legislative hurdle in front of it is because a lot of people become victim in that process because of the legislative hurdles. And the same principle applies in criminal justice. When you are going in the direction of more stringent penalties and a more draconian implementation of the law, the pre-existing law, you are going to put a lot of people that even you yourself consider to be like innocent victims of material circumstance in prison.
It's not
and
getting through.
Explode the prison population. The way to make up for that now is to not only just open up new state penitentiaries, but implement private prison facilities. And it contributes to the same cycle of violence and a lack of lowering the recidivism rate to begin with. So we're looking at a situation, and I feel like it's very reactionary thinking to look at like America's criminal justice system that you and I both agree is fundamentally fucking broken, and say we need more of that because there's not enough of it happening, when in fact it has nothing to do with the actual draconian ways in which we have rigorously applied the law, and everything to do with the underlying material circumstances. And in the absence of no one actually fixing the material circumstances, you're saying, well, in the process we should just like criminalize more shit. And I think
I'm not sure I understood what you're saying, but I'll address a couple of things. First of all, on the abortion analogy, I think that abortion should be illegal in the third trimester, but there should be, of course, an exception for the life and health of the mother that the doctor decides along with the mom. And if the Republicans say, no, that's too broad an exception, okay, we could have that debate. So, but I'm not sure how this relates to this. So
I have no idea.
I'm not even in favor of. I'm not even in favor of like criminalizing abortions in the third trimester. I think
okay, that's fine. We disagree on that.
Abortions.
So, and again,
but do you understand why?
But the great majority of the American people agree with me on that.
My job as someone with a perspective is to try to get other people to understand where I'm coming from on this issue, and I think I can try and communicate. I did as to why criminalizing third trimester abortions, which is an incredibly rare procedure to begin with.
It is incredibly rare.
It is an incredibly rare procedure to begin with, is only adding additional legal hurdles in an otherwise incredibly traumatic experience that the carrier is going through.
What it's doing is
completely unnecessary.
It's making your position look extreme for no reason, when the great majority of the incredibly rare cases are a medical necessity. Almost all of them are a medical necessity. Once you put a medical necessity exception in, you're needlessly making your position look more extreme by saying you're allowed to abort up until the day of the.
But like having 25% of the world's prisoners, 25%, a quarter of all the prisoners in the world, a quarter of all the human beings who are locked up in cages, being in one country, that's not extreme? Is that extreme? Could you define that as extreme? That seems to me pretty fucking extreme. That seems very extreme.
On third trimester abortions, but the reason why it is unnecessary and conciliatory to the Republican position that is born out of not real truth of the matter, but instead hysterical, made up hallucinations like women are getting fun abortions after carrying a pregnancy to almost term, is because you're adding an unnecessary legal hurdle on a complicated medical procedure that is automatically limited by its own complication.
If you do that policy, Haas, the Republicans...
It already exists.
No, I get it. And by the way, and the Republicans do use that in debates.
So
and what it does is it hurts abortion rights. It hurts abortion rights. Because what winds up happening is they go, oh, these sons of bitches want to abort right up until the day of the abortion. And that's why they're so extreme.
That's on them. I can't control that.
Wait, how the hell did we get to 6 weeks? Everybody already...
If they want to lie, what am I supposed to do?
You know what they
24 weeks protects almost all women. You know what they say? To protect the women beyond
now that. They say post-birth abortions. It's ridiculous.
But it's like what in what world are you supposed to be like? Well, I mean, you got to just change what you're asking for and change what the left is advocating for in terms of human rights, because otherwise the right will just go more extreme and batshit. They do that already. They do that when there's even a modicum of change in one direction. They completely push back with batshittery. You can't control the Tim Pools of the world who are going to sit there and all of a sudden be like, yeah, apparently you guys want to advocate for guillotines for babies as the baby head crowns, you cut off the head, and that's what you think is right. It's like, I'm never going to be able to change the way the extremists on the right try to push their narrative. You can only advocate for what is actually scientifically and reasonably sound and what actually helps people. That's an absurd argument.
Should you be allowed to get an abortion because you chose to, after the fetus is viable? And I think the answer is no. Once the fetus is viable, it's an independent human being. And you don't get to make that choice on your own without a
None of us do. 3 cis dudes? Are you fucking kidding me? Why are you buying into right-wing narratives? Why are you like, well, I think as soon as I can determine viability. Do you know how complex that is to be able to suddenly decide, I don't know, based on the amount of electrical impulses the fetus has, or sorry, should I say human child, on the heartbeat, on this? No. Cis dudes are not the ones who should be making this decision. This is why at its fundamental core, this should still be a woman's choice, or a person who gives birth's choice. The person who gives birth, it should be in control of their autonomy, of their fucking body. This is wild.
Let's say a premature baby can exist outside in a vacuum. Like the fact that you have to still cut a woman up to be able to get that out is like,
I know, but we're not cutting her up, Haas. We're just saying you have to finish the pregnancy.
No, I fundamentally disagree with you on this.
Okay, no problem. We'll disagree.
I'm just letting you know.
In the third trimester, by the way, you know, my standard is the Roe standard, right? You're going beyond Roe. Roe said illegal in the third trimester.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't like my
so
statement is
and I'm saying
no. Roe applies a minimum standard. That's the most important. That's the most consequential aspect of Roe is that there is a minimum standard that states cannot go beyond. And I think that it's valid to have a minimum standard as a federally protected mandate when there are plenty of states, as we saw, that already had automatic trigger laws that would implement if Roe v. Wade was overturned. As long as there's a minimum standard, then that's good. I would go so far as to say that there should be no legal hurdles whatsoever, especially considering that the third trimester abortions, as you and I both agree, is not like a fun abortion, especially because the process in which you're the process in which you're getting to a third trimester is already laborious to begin with.
So strategically, I bet we have a disagreement here. When I look at the abortion issue as an example, Republicans say that it should be either 0 weeks or 6 weeks where the woman loses her rights, right? Loosely speaking, the right wing says that. You're saying the entire 9 months it should be up to the woman, and I'm saying 24 weeks. So now the majority of Americans think 24 weeks.
Man.
But if we go with your 9 month strategy, Haas, what I'm worried about is that we're going to wind up at 15 weeks instead of 24 weeks, because the Republicans are going to say, look at how extreme they are. Look at how extreme they are. They're saying that you should be able to, whether they do or they don't.
Regardless of the majority position, the Republicans did undermine the democratic process. I think you and I are aware of that, right?
What do you mean by that?
Like, regardless of how good of an argument that the Democrats could have presented on this issue, the Republicans still went in. What did? They used the Federalist Society over the course of 45 years and basically, beefed up the ranks of the Supreme Court and actually did undermine public opinion on this matter, the democratic principle on this matter.
I don't agree with any of that. They took over the Supreme Court, but they didn't do it in an undemocratic way. They won elections. The only thing that was undemocratic and wrong as a matter of process was Merrick Garland.
The Supreme Court is an inherently undemocratic. The Supreme Court is an undemocratic institution.
With the Supreme Court. No, I don't agree with that. But the Supreme Court has done massive damage, and it's because the right wing did put in activist judges, etc. But in terms of, and I think Roe v. Wade was decided wrong. But as a matter of law, I would adopt Roe v. Wade immediately.
The three appointments. You're
going to drive them to go to 15
The three
weeks
appointments
or 6
in the
weeks.
Supreme Court lied to the American public in congressional hearings deliberately, calling Roe v. Wade a super precedent, implying that the democratic wishes of the American population.
Oh, everybody knew they were fucking liars.
Yeah,
other than the
I know, but there's a reason why they did that. Is because that's inherently corrupt and inherently undemocratic. The Supreme Court as a function is not democratic.
If you believe a right-wing Supreme Court candidate, when they say they're going to call balls and strikes, you're a moron.
Yeah, I don't. I never did. But my point is that it is a fundamentally undemocratic institution. On its fundamentals, the Supreme Court is an undemocratic institution.
Now we're debating the Supreme Court. That's too long a debate, brother.
Okay, but
you need checks and balances. You need a judiciary. If you want to structure the Electoral College differently, yes.
By design.
If you want to structure the Supreme Court in a different way, I'm here happy to hear suggestions, but those obviously aren't realistic.
Okay.
The Electoral College is way more realistic, and we should definitely get rid of it. I'm just
Is there a single topic so far that he hasn't basically replicated what you would hear on right-wing reactionary channels on anything? Because he keeps like going back to this, like the radical left are the problem, and then he will say something that I've heard Tim Pool say, or he'll be like, oh, the radical left are the problem, and then he'll be the same on crime that Steven Crowder is. I don't know if these are all, like, I know he's always been right on you know, criminal justice reform, but on every other topic, especially abortion, to have said something like that is like, is this a sign of like, this is what I truly believe in, I can finally talk like this? Boy, it's been annoying as fuck having the left always being mad whenever I go this way. Or is it just like, I don't give a fuck anymore, like I can just do this?
If there is any sort of real reason, if you think that there's any sort of like validity to right-wing framing on issues, I don't think so.
Okay, so now that's your perspective, and everybody
Yeah.
lives in different bubbles. Now let me tell you my perspective and how I view it, right? First of all, you can go back 20 years. We're on tape on all these issues. I haven't changed any of my positions. I said the same exact thing about abortion, same exact thing about crime, same exact thing about everything. So there is no turn. There is no right.
So back in the day, he used to say that women should lose bodily autonomy if it can be determined that a fetus is viable. He used to say that all the time. Because again, that is exactly what Tim Pool says. That's like word for word. Where it's just like, in what world do you get to determine that? And why should that restrict the rights that a woman has to be able to choose and control her own healthcare based on fucking men trying to determine, well, I mean, what is the heartbeat? What is the electrical impulses? Is it viable? Could it possibly survive outside of the womb? At that point, you're not allowed. You have to give birth. We're going to force you to do that. This is, again, insane. I like, when did it get like this? Where this is supposed to be considered, like, in any way, shape, or form, a leftist position.
That stops red states from actually implementing worse penalties.
Let me get to my perspective. In my perspective, what you guys are doing is both, number one, I don't agree with it on the substance of it and have never agreed to it on the substance of it. Number two, most importantly, I disagree with your strategy. Your strategy appears to be take the most extreme left-wing position and defend that hill forever and ever and ever. And what that does, in my opinion, is it gets the average American, the moderate and independent, to think, oh, all of the left, all of the Democrats are super extreme. They take the extreme position on every single issue. And it's a position we do not agree with.
None of us are the Democrats. The Democrats are mostly corporate neoliberals. That's it. There's very little representation for the left in U.S. politics. There's so little that they actually have a name for the team of them when they band together. Like, Jesus Christ. You keep saying that. It's like, and the Democrats take the most extreme positions. No, they don't. Have you seen ads for Democrats, especially in, like, deep fucking middle states, southern states, red states? They talk just like conservatives. It's just like, I love my gun. I love farmers. I've never once said that I'm going to be going after white farmers with taxation. Like, it's like... This is ridiculous.
The lifetime, especially the Republican Party, has been so much more extreme than the left has. But you guys have ceded that ground and raised your hand and said, yes, we're the most extreme. Please, we're the extremists, right?
I think
that's a terrible strategy.
I think attributing the right-wing domination over the American political sphere to the left going too woke or too extreme is silly. You and I have a disagreement in dealing with these issues when they come up. I think the Democratic Party should be closer to the Republican Party in the way that they engage with politics, not on policy, but in the way that they engage with politics. If the Democratic Party frames the Republicans in a certain way, right, that makes them look bad, they never turn around and go, you know what? You're right. Actually, I'm so sorry. I'm going to cave to you. You're right. I'm so sorry. You said we're Nazis.
To them. They're my positions.
You're okay. Well, regardless.
Yeah, Donald Trump just put out a statement today that was shitting all over anyone who didn't vote for him, essentially. It was like, hey, thanks to the radical left and all the fucking Democrats of this country, you gave me a landslide victory. Like, it's just like, he doesn't do the reach across the aisle. The Republicans don't do the whole, like, we can't wait to appoint a Democrat to our cabinet. they shit on the other side, which is why the cowardice of Democrats is always going to have to run up against people who cheat, who gerrymander, who talk shit, who don't cooperate, who obstruct, who block every single fucking bill that comes along the way. And if you're consistently like, we have to play nice, when they go low, we go high, that slogan, it doesn't fucking work. The other team is fucking crushing you. And people like this are basically trying to justify it by being like, oh yeah, sorry, that was because of the radical left, and y'all didn't go enough to the center right, even though that's exactly how you campaigned.
That's how legislation works. That's how rules work. There are going to be
that point.
There are going to be unnecessary victims on that.
On legal issues, I am conservative. And so what I mean, and I've said that all throughout. So what does that mean? That means I don't believe in activist bullshit justices going, oh yeah, I think money is speech. I think bribes are not bribes. They're just suggestions to politicians. Fuck you. You're an activist piece of shit. And that doesn't make any sense at all for you to redefine bribery as perfectly legal First Amendment rights. Bullshit. I mean, it led to corporate rule. Same activist judges that made those decisions in Belani and Buckley then turn around in Roe v. Wade and go, oh yeah, it turns out that
there's no such thing as a leftist conservative, by the way. At a certain point, I guess he's just getting there. We're easing it in, but eventually he's going to have to just drop the labels and be like, yeah, the left lost their mind. That's why I left the left, and they're radical extremists. And I guess by definition, I'm a conservative. But that's just because the Overton window ran so far away from me that now my moderate positions are seen as extreme. That's it.
Also, activist judges on the other side. I don't care if there are activist judges that are actually progressive, but I do still think that fundamentally the Supreme Court
Board of Education actually looked at what the Constitution said, and it said equality is not unclear. This document clearly states that we should have equality. So the guys pretending that the Constitution says we should be unequal is a lie. It's not true.
This is another issue that we fundamentally disagree on. I don't believe that there is any sort of strict interpretation or anything like that. I think that people have their own personal convictions and also the ideology of the party that appointed them, and they advance that agenda regardless.
Absolutely.
And that like the literalist understanding or the strict textualist understanding is a relatively new phenomenon.
Not to mention the hypocrisy of Republicans or constitutionalists who constantly try to talk about how they care so much and so deeply about the Second Amendment to the Constitution. It's so important. Well, what about the First Amendment? Yeah, I believe in the First Amendment too. Well, okay, what about in the specific case right now that the government should pass no laws that are going to infringe upon the freedom of the press? That's fundamental to what you're fighting against here, right? And this is actually against freedom of speech. It's like you pick and choose which parts of the Constitution you want to adhere to, or you add amendments to add new parts to it, right? Say you don't want to own human beings as slavery unless they, under Cenk's definition, have committed one of the many crimes, like being a serial pizza thief.
People that were passing the laws saying that you couldn't get married other races, they were the ones that were committing an unconstitutional act. They were wrong. So anyways, okay, look, before we go, you're asked about, hey, is it, and everybody online is it a right-wing turn or whatever. I want to clarify something that's important. There are three different parts of what we call Republicans or right wing, right? So, and we should have different standards. And I'm curious. One of the reasons I'm bringing it up is I'm curious what you think about this. So, number one, when you talk, the three different layers are Trump in this new MAGA world, people around Trump, and then the voters. Okay, so for the people around Trump have proven in the past that they do not have good intent. Their intent is corporate tax cuts.
He's going to do the populism thing.
Vicious to immigrants, not just, hey, stop the border, not just remain in Mexico, but they've shown in different instances that they hate undocumented immigrants, but they also hate documented immigrants. Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, et cetera, et cetera. So, so the people around him are going to try to lead him in the wrong direction. I think Trump himself is... can go in either direction because he's an empty vessel. He just wants to be popular. The people around him push him to do extreme things, and he did that, and he was perfectly happy to do that. I'm not making any excuses for him, okay? He did a whole heap of extreme stuff in his first term because of the Stephen Millers and the Steve Bannons, et cetera, pushing him in that direction. Is there a small percentage chance that Trump could actually go in a right direction if he thought it made him more popular? Okay. And I say yes. I think there is a small percentage chance that he could actually go in the right direction if he thinks it'll help him And he doesn't care about ideology at all. He doesn't care about a conservative ideology. He doesn't care about what MAGA ideology is.
Fucking called it.
He will go in a direction that's popular. Okay, potentially. Okay. Now, but that's both of those things are not as important as the right-wing voters. So what I now see is a different right-wing base. And so I'm curious what you think about this. In 2016,
a better
MAGA
audience.
was Donald Trump is God.
A bigger audience.
Whatever Donald Trump says, even if it's the exact opposite of what I always thought in my life, I'm going to defer to Donald Trump and forget anything I've ever said. Okay. And I don't mean on tariffs and stuff like that. A bunch of the corporate Republicans and corporate media pretended that the Republicans didn't like tariffs, pretended that the Republicans loved free trade, that the Republicans loved war, that the Republican voters loved corporations and corporate power. That's not true at all.
They do love corporate power.
So
what the fuck are you talking about?
But there are a bunch of things that Trump would say that was like corporate tax cuts is not populist. It's not popular. Right-wing voters don't even want it. But Trump said, no, give the richest corporations in the world a tax cut. And MAGA said, yes, the rich win again. Thank God. Woohoo. Right. And that made no sense. So I fought tooth and nail against not just Trump, but MAGA. What I'm seeing now is that there is a genuine portion, not the whole thing, portion of MAGA that is actual right-wing populists. And so what that means is we might disagree with them on social issues and we fight like hell on those social issues. But on some core economic issues, they actually are anti-war. They actually are anti-corruption. They are these things. I'm not saying
he's shown that with his cabinet
I'm not saying
too.
His advisors are.
Oh,
I'm saying the actual voters are.
Okay.
So I don't know if the number is 25%.
Viewers, you mean.
I don't know if it's 55%. I don't know what the number is. But I don't think it's lower than 25%. And I think that 25% of the new MAGA, if Trump goes, no, I now say that Israel is great. You should all bow your heads to Israel. We're going to pay for their endless wars. And in fact, we're going to help them start a war in Iran. And you guys are going to have to fight that war in Iran. And you're going to have to pay trillions of dollars to fight that war in Iran. I think at least 25% of his base goes, fuck this. That's not what I signed up for. So I'm curious what your take on that is. Am I crazy in your mind? There is no such thing. MAGA's still blind.
No, I think most.
I think you're Jackson Hinkle. That's what this is. This is 100% MAGA communism fucking rhetoric.
Operate with whatever is in their pocket, and they might not have voted for Donald Trump originally because they were like certain that he was going to. Joyce here. That they were 100% certain that he was going to do mass deportations. Some people probably didn't even consider it. Other people certainly were interested in it. I don't think that every single person voted for 20 million immigrants being forcibly deported from this country by using the military. But that's neither here nor there. I think ultimately, whatever Donald Trump does, his base of support is still going to figure out a way to go along with it just like they did. Trump did a whole bunch of unpopular things in 2016. He will continue to do a whole bunch of unpopular things this time around as well. And people are still going to find a way to reason with it and justify it as a sunk cost fallacy. In their minds, they're like, yeah, we voted for this guy. And I think things are probably going to be better. And you have a massive right-wing media ecosystem that will look to present it as though that is like look to make it seem like that is the case, that Trump is actually on board with these principles that he claimed he was on board with. And we see this with Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is a hawk. He is not a populist right-winger, and yet you don't see a lot of chirping coming from the MAGA media ecosystem. I do see it.
That's the difference. So I'm looking at right-wing populists, and when I tell them Marco Rubio, Elise Stefanik, Mike Huckabee, and Mike Waltz are Team Israel, Team Miriam, and they're neocons, and Tom Cotton's a neocon piece of shit, they go, yeah, we agree. Okay.
Yeah, but they don't care.
So they might not care now, but when if they start a war and they say you pay for it and you fight for it, I think they're gonna care.
The fuck?
And by the way, as he's closing that, because you think right-wing MAGA, some portion of it, 25% or whatever the number is, right, might agree with us or might do the right thing, doesn't mean that you agree with them on all the wrong things, right? Like a good example is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And this goes to your point more so far, right? Which is Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is cops on Wall Street, and every dollar spent there returns $20 in stolen money from the bankers.
Yeah, and the Republican donors hate it, and Donald Trump is going to fucking nuke it into orbit.
Yeah, and so, and there I'm saying, look, I disagree with Matt. If MAGA agrees with Trump on that, I disagree. No, you guys are wrong. You're going to let them rob the place blind, and helping Wall Street.
By the way, just so we're totally clear, this guy a couple months ago ran a political campaign based on the premise, his own words, Donald Trump is a fascist. He's a fascist. He's going to be a fascist dictator. We have to do anything we can to stop him. That's why you need to help donate to my campaign. Give me money. I also happen to have a book released at the exact same time, but that's not, having anything to do with this. And we need to band together to stop the incoming potential fascist reign of Donald Trump. Donald Trump comes into power, the whole political campaign's over, and now it's, by the way, I just want to let you know there's a percentage of MAGA who are not in this cult. There's a percentage of Republicans who don't believe in war. They are going to be anti-war. They're going to be anti-corporate. They're populists. They just want populist policies. And you know what? There's going to be people who eventually fight back. I know that I'm going to be proven right on this. It's like this is utterly and fucking meaningless at this point to listen to this man.
Of Mark Kelly, famously, but ultimately, when you look at her AFL-CIO score, she's still scoring at 10%. So I don't think that these people.
Teachers Union wants her. The Teamsters wants her. Almost every union wants her.
I think they're making a calculation that like she's better than a fucking absolute psychopath that they were going to put in place. And I totally understand that. I know, but that's still far worse than a Democrat putting.
But would you? If let's say you unilaterally can decide she's the labor secretary under Trump, yes or no, what do you decide?
Yeah, no, I have a decision in this process.
You don't get to pick who it is. You just get to say yes or no to her.
Oh yeah, no, I do say yes to her.
Okay,
over,
I agree.
Yeah, no, you and I are in agreement on that. I'm saying that like it is. I think that it is simply leaning in that direction. It's the same reason why like Josh Hawley presents himself as a populist when he's not. You know what I mean?
No, he's half a populist now. He's a quarter of a populist now. He stopped taking corporate PAC money, and what happened right afterwards? He became anti-war and anti-corruption. Now you could say it's bullshit, but if you vote a certain way, it's not bullshit. Votes are votes. Okay. So now, if you say on the other hand, I could show you 12 things he does that's fraudulent and actually helps the bankers. I agree with you.
Yeah, he comes across great.
You
when
either
he's like
don't know what that word
means,
or
like pharmaceutical CEOs or whatever in a congressional hearing. But ultimately,
that's a huge step up.
I just don't
from
think
a squadron of establishment Republicans who were just like corporate robots.
No, I think that these guys are recognizing that there is a messaging gap that the Democratic Party is lost. It's the Tucker Carlson phenomenon. I talked about this back when Tucker Carlson had the most popular news broadcast in television, where I said I warned America and I warned the Democratic Party that like because you are actively undermining left-wing economic policies and actively undermining left-wing economic, like real economic populism, and you're pushing it away, someone's going to make up for the messaging gap. And it's going to be the right wing. It's going to be the likes of Tucker Carlson who present themselves as falsely in support of these sorts of policies. When push comes to shove, they're not going to do it.
So you don't have to vote for Hawley, and I'm not voting for Hawley. But if Hawley votes with us or Matt Gaetz votes with us, as toxic as they might be, if they vote with us on, for example, what Gaetz did vote with us on, saying that the president cannot bomb Iran without getting permission from Congress, you take the win, right? You say, all right, okay, I like that Matt Gaetz voted that way, and I like that
ultimately
they
know that.
Yeah, taking the win, as in just allowing them to vote on something without having to justify or back up anything that they stand for, is very different. If it's like, hey, by the way, this bill passed because X amount of people voted on it, some of those people happen to be Republicans, cool, I'm glad the anti-war bill passes. What does this have to do with being like, Matt Gaetz is a populist now? Hawley's a populist now, and we need to identify that, and we need to reach out to them, and we need to reach out to people who are sympathetic to them. No, we fucking don't. What are you talking about? Matt Gaetz is a pedophile, fucking child trafficking, rapist, insane person. There's no justification. Like, he's the only person, I believe, who voted against a human trafficking bill, and that makes more sense to me than him suddenly being some huge, like, I'm against war. I'm actually anti-war. You are being duped if that's what you believe. Like, what a ridiculous fucking statement.
they've said that they might cut the Pentagon. When they don't cut the Pentagon, it creates a little bit of pressure for them, right?
I don't think it does. That's my point. I we'll see, but I don't think that they're going to cut it. They're just lying because they're better room readers than the Democratic Party is.
But you agree that when I said that and Elon agreed and Don Jr. agreed, the reason they agreed is not because of me. They don't give a shit about me. It's because there was thousands and thousands of right-wing populists who said, fuck yeah, right?
Yeah, but ultimately it's going to be business as usual is my point.
And
the
then,
Republicans,
so then the right-wing populists will
stage,
see that, hey, it might turn out that Trump is just as full of shit as the Democrats are
because
he's a politician.
At this stage, I think it's literally, and it was what I responded to you with as well. It's like that Republicans at least understand that like it's good to lie to win elections, whereas Democrats have completely even dropped that principle where they're like, or that's not even true. They lie about the lamest shit possible. They're like, they're not going to fucking do a $50,000 tax credit for startups. But why the fuck are you lying about that? Yeah. Lie about health.
Also, you ran a political campaign. I feel like this is being ignored. Literally a couple months ago, he was running for president. He ran for president under the premise that Trump was a fascist. That was a real thing that happened.
Full of controlled opposition at this point where I think they're comfortable losing to Trump. They're comfortable fundraising off of Trump's victory. They're comfortable not having to legislate.
So I slightly disagree with that. But it's a degree because what it is in the old days, we just had a uniparty, corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats. They all pretended to have fights, good cop, bad cop. And then corporate media would come in and go, oh my God, they disagree so much.
Sounds made up.
My God,
yeah, at this point, I'm questioning myself.
Broke out. They've agreed to tax cuts for the rich. Everybody celebrate. Bipartisanship is so good. And corporate Republicans and Democrats would go, yay, bipartisanship. Help the rich, right? So that's the game that was played for almost my whole life. Then Bernie came along and said, no, this is bullshit. All they're doing is helping the rich. That's my wing of the Democratic Party, economic populist. I love that. That is true. That was a first brick through the window of the establishment, right? Rhetorically, metaphorically, politically. And then Trump came along and Trump realized what you're saying, which is, oh, populism works. Look at Bernie, look at this. But they came to it at the same time.
He was already, I think he was organically there.
Yeah, he was organically
He was
there.
an outsider. He's always had like.
I just want to make sure.
It's a big announcement that will basically take up the entirety of the second hour of the show today. Here to make that announcement in the capacity as a guest is.
I had not yet made up my mind, but I have now, and I have filed. I will be running for president of the United States of America.
Okay,
so Cenkforamerica.com, and the idea here, guys, is let's change the course. Right now, Joe Biden is down 24 points in the economy, 19 points on jobs when he actually did better on jobs than Trump did. He's down 13 points from where he was in 2020. He is not going to win. I am running. Yes, I am a break glass in case of emergency candidate. It should not have been me. It should have been someone else, but unfortunately it was not anyone else. And now there's only 4 months left. We must change course. He has at best a 10% chance of winning. Donald Trump is an actual fascist. So I am running as a proxy.
Donald Trump is an actual fascist. The words, yeah. So that wasn't
running to win,
that.
But I'm also running as a proxy for any other candidate. We have got to get Biden out of the race. Thank you for winning in 2020. But if he loses this time around, it's not just his problem, it's all of our problems. I actually think democracy is on the line. And so if it takes me running, then that's what I'm going to do. And we're all going to do it together. And by the way, and I'll say this up front and then I'll let you ask all your questions.
So can anyone ever take this seriously again then? Like, does anyone know what the word fascist means? Like, I feel at this point, so many people have just completely fucking heel turned on this shit. Yeah, I know, the hero you deserve.
In your estimation.
Probably.
I disagree.
All right, well, and you should tell me what name to call you guys. But so Trump. So, and I would say to the right wing guys, if you think the establishment Democrats are obviously lying, did it ever occur to you that Trump might also be lying? It's the same exact thing I tell to the Democrats. Trump's always lying. Did it ever occur to you that Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden might also be lying?
Yeah.
Did it ever occur to you? I'm not saying to you, I'm saying to like the establishment Democrats, right? Did it ever occur to you that maybe Joe Biden is too old? Maybe he does have cognitive decline. But right wing, I'm asking you the same thing. Did it ever occur to you that maybe Donald Trump also lies? And he lies a lot. And he's trying to give you guys what he thinks you want so he can win the election. But if you hold them accountable after the election, I'm here for it. Okay.
I just
but
don't
if
think
you
they're
don't
gonna
hold
do
him
that.
accountable and you let
I'm
him lie
here
to you,
for it.
and all he does is
That video was like 4 months ago. 4 months ago. He's a full-blown fascist, and we have to do everything we can to stop him. This is a break glass in case of emergencies moment. I understand that, but he's a full-blown fascist, and we have to stop him. Hey, you know, the guy could just be a populist. There's a lot of populists, and I think there's a percentage of the supporters who won't support him if he does any kind of non-populist policies, and I'm ready to work with him, and they're listening to me, and I went online, and then Elon Musk replied to me, Donald Trump Jr. replied to me, and that's what's really going on.
Pussy hat wearing women's marches or whatever, but ultimately it doesn't really change the trajectory of the country. And there is no better demonstration of both
went from calling him
uniparty
a
and the
fascist to being a
inability of
fascist
either party
collaborator
to
then.
actually respond to any sort of public pressure was best demonstrated by the pro-Palestinian movement in this country that was massive. And what the fuck did the Democrats do? They went back. They went to the colleges and they were like, "You're all Hamas. You love Hamas. You're all backed by Iran." And then they started arresting campus demonstrators. Not only did they arrest them, but they added significant penalties to demonstrating on college campuses, and the uniparty continued. So I don't think that people give a shit. I mean, look at BLM, Black Lives Matter protests happened, massively consequential. Supposedly, it happened globally. It was supposed to be truly impactful. The Democrats did what you wanted, which is they had their sister soldier moment. For those of you who don't know, it's, you know, they basically said, we are not this. These guys are terrorists. They're too far left. They're too woke. What happened as a consequence of that?
Bill Clinton won.
Joe Biden. No, we're talking about the
But
Democratic
Bill
Party.
Clinton did Sister Soldier and he won.
Yeah, I know.
don't agree with you that I'm doing a Sister Soldier.
But I'm saying
you
the
guys are almost doing it in reverse.
Do you
yeah.
see the Democratic
There you
Party? Do you see what I'm saying when I say the Democratic Party said we're determining in the limited time that we have
Clean up your room.
to not necessarily get to the heart of the problem with this groundswell of
You think I'm going to get to all
demonstrations
the
that took
gifted
place
subs at the end?
instead of addressing the root cause of this and saying this is our policy prescription and that you know there has to be some real changes made. They said those guys are extreme. We love funding the police. We're going to fund the police extra fucking hard, okay? And we're going to be the number one funders of police. And that the Republicans don't actually want to fund the police as hard as we want to fund the police. And while Joe Biden won by 42,000 votes over key states, it ultimately did not change the dynamic in favor of the Democratic Party. They completely dropped that. They completely dropped the police reform. They built 8 Can't Wait as a countermeasure in the same way that like the Republican think tank Heritage Foundation had originally created Obama's ACA as a countermeasure towards socialized medicine. They built up something else. Just like Joe Biden said, oh, I'm going to do the public option, which was simply just a countermeasure to Medicare for all to say, we have a solution. It's a better solution backed by, corporate media and pumped it, even though he had no reason or no interest in genuinely advancing even the public option. The Democrats said, we're going to do 8 Can't Wait. Okay. It was significantly limited. And then they spent the entire time saying, these guys, these radical leftists, these radical BLM protesters, they are not us. They're different than us. Did the public actually look at that and go, wow, the Democrats are so reasonable. They want to fund the police. They are not representative of the abolish the police constituency in the party. No, they didn't. They just saw the Democrats still in the same exact way. Pete Buttigieg had a really good point on this.
So many issues. Okay.
No, it's the same because I'm not conflating issues. I'm conflating the same. I'm explaining the same principle that Democrats, the same trap that Democrats fall into every single time. Pete Buttigieg had actually, ironically, a really solid take on this, even though I don't like him at all and I'm terrified of him. Here's what he said. No matter what we do, whether we want the public option or whether we want Medicare for all, Republicans are going to always call us socialists. So at a certain point, you should just advance your agenda and move on. They're going to call us socialists, whether we're in favor of that or not in favor of that. So just do good policies.
Clean up your room.
That is the first and last time I've ever agreed with Pete Buttigieg.
So let me break it down. So I think there's three wings of the Democratic Party. There's the establishment Democrats or corporate Democrats, same thing. We can call them establishment guys. Okay, neither one of us agrees with them. Okay, so then I think there is the economically populist wing that Bernie 2016 represented perfectly. That's exactly where Anna and I are, and generally Young Turks are. But Young Turks, TYT as a network is broad and it has all the different types of Democrats. Okay, so then the last wing is what I'm struggling to find a word on.
I mean, Bernie had significant criminal justice reform in his agenda that I don't think you would agree with.
No, it depends on the criminal justice reform we're
He
talking
also said
about. It always
trans rights or
depends.
humans rights.
So,
Don't think you would agree with that either.
the last wing is what I would call the extreme left, but you can come up, or identitarian left, whichever word you want to use. Okay. So when you go into
Woke left.
elections, my whole lifetime, Democrats have done the thing that you were talking about, but they've done it largely about economic issues. So the Republican will say, oh, hey, they're going to cut defense. Can you believe they're going to cut defense? They're weak on defense. And then Donnelly in Indiana, McCaskill in Missouri, et cetera, would come out and go, no way, man. They said we're weak on defense, and I'm not a normal dirtbag liberal that hates defense and is going to get you all killed, okay? I'm just like the Republicans, man. I want to spend more on defense. Okay, that is not a moderate position, and that is not a position that agrees with the populist left. That is not a position that is an establishment Democrat saying, I am copying establishment Republicans. That is a loser strategy, total, utter loser strategy. I'm going to be more corporate than you. I'm going to fund the donors better than you. I'm going to be more establishment than you. You and I agree. That's what the Democrats have done our whole lifetime, and that is totally wrong.
I think that's what they do on every single issue that Republicans choose to make their major point. And I think the attitude shift and the territory that they've lost on, the territory that they've voluntarily given up on in terms of social progress, in terms of social issues, is proof of this. That's what I mean.
So, but
Republicans
now, those
will
are
always,
economic issues. Those
Republicans were angry at gay marriage. They were angry at gay people. Gay people were in the crosshairs. Democrats, for one reason or another, saw the writing on the wall and actually pushed for gay marriage. It got normalized. They moved on. They were like, let's get back to the drawing
that's
board.
exactly what I did.
And then they moved on to trans issues. They tried to attack trans people
So that
in
gets
numerous
us to the
different
other.
ways.
So now, on non-economic issues, on social issues, sometimes we have an intensely popular position, and then they walk away from it, and it drives me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes they will, because of what I call the extreme left, go to a position that appears to be defund the police. So I don't know what you feel about defund the police, but basically,
I think on principles is the exact same thing that I've said over and over again. There is a multitude of different perspectives on the left in terms of what to do with police. Okay, some people want to abolish it in its entirety. I don't agree with that. But even then, I have normal conversations with anarchists who want to do that and still come at it from a place of respect and understanding.
Yeah,
especially
I
if we're
don't. I think
having, especially, okay, it doesn't matter. That's
Epic.
the reason why a lot of people
Cool
look
story,
at you and
bro.
think you're reactionary in this situation. And you get mad.
So, wait, hold on. So 70 to 80%, in the case of abolished
Here we
prisons,
go.
98% of the country is reactionary?
No, well, first of all, it's entirely dependent on what is considered normal. People also thought slavery was good. You know what I mean? It doesn't.
So abolishing prisons.
No, I don't agree with that. But
So you
listen,
don't- so
no, I'm
98%
talking
of
about
the
the treatment. I'm
So
talking
you
about
want
the
criminals to be free?
the treatment and the empathy and
You want the
understanding that you
rapists to run
demonstrate when
in the
having these
streets?
conversations is
Hasan?
important,
So
especially
I
if you're
have to empathize
focusing
with
on.
abolishing prisons and go, oh, you might be right. That's super interesting.
No,
Maybe we let all the criminals
I
run
already
free.
just
Oh,
described to you that I don't agree with that position, but
You know what's so frustrating about this is that he had Olayemi on who explained every single one of these concepts, that that's not what prison abolition means. Prison abolition does not mean that we should be letting rapists run the streets free and shit like that. And even though there were times when he's like, okay, well, when you put it like that, I think that that's a more reasonable take that a lot of people could like get behind. They don't learn anything. He doesn't care. He leaves his house and he sees people on the street and he's like, poor, drugs, gross. and then goes on the fucking TYT studios and talks about how the Venezuelans are apparently taking over entire city blocks and apartments and shit.
That's not what this point is. My point is that it's important to understand where people are coming from and how they arrive at these conclusions. If the overarching goal is to
Do you think they do likewise? When they scream Nazi, or do you think they're having a respectful conversation about where the boundaries should lie and where we should draw the lines?
No, but you're also a seasoned media professional that has been in this career for what 25 fucking years. So you should understand that there's going to be a lot of noise and you pick and choose
when
your
they
battles.
say Nazi, I should say, "Oh, really? What
Nazi
professors
too.
agree with you?" That's such an interesting intellectual conversation.
They call me a Nazi too, and then they come back and then they listen. And there's a difference between the way I deal with it and the way that you deal with it, because I ultimately see that as relatively inconsequential.
Also, no one's done that. These are all made up.
All the voters to know that the Democratic Party, the right, and the left, the populist left, the Bernie Sanders movement, etc., does not agree with lunatics who want to abolish prisons. So that is super important for them to understand.
Do you want to this is what I was saying. In terms of like identifying.
Maybe don't word it that way, because you're just attacking the left more than you're attacking anyone on the right. He spent more time in the last 3 hours, because I've been watching this entire thing, and it's draining every piece of my life essence. He spent all this time going after people who he considers the extreme left, the woke left, the identity politics left, that he has going after Republicans, MAGA, Republican fucking policies. He's been defending a lot of them. He's been speaking out about how, they're actually anti-war in a lot of cases. Matt Gaetz is actually going to be voting on some of these. That's a win, right? Shouldn't we talk about how that's good? That this is all just masking the truth of what is happening, though, right? Like, he doesn't genuinely believe in his heart of hearts that, like, every single person who's speaking out against this happens in, like, why not phrase it that, hey, by the way, it would be a terrible idea if we let rapists get away with rape. That's the current system we have. I want to change that. It really fucking sucks. It's pretty deplorable that there's so many untested rape kits right now. That's the current system. That's the one we live in. Let's change this shit. You don't need to get up there and be like, fucking, fuck the police coming straight from the underground, and that's how you open your fucking, speeches and shit like that. You can point out the problems with the existing system if you want to advocate for abolition, if you want to advocate for prison reform, if you want to talk about that kind of stuff.
That. And addressing it simply makes people think, one, it makes everybody on the left, on the correct position, go, oh, she's only hyper-focusing on these extreme examples to vilify the entirety of the protests, which is exactly what she was doing. Right, they say, oh, that bitch, and make it seem like...
You're right. You're right. That is what the right...
So do you understand?
She'll do anything for Israel.
That politicians shouldn't just, because it's unproductive and she wants to present it as though she loves Israel.
So we both agree that she handled it wrong. So this is a fun exercise. So why don't you say how you would have handled it?
Yeah.
If you're the candidate,
More thought
and then I'll say
experiments.
how I would have handled it.
Oh my
God.
Oh, I would have immediately come out and been like, I would not have addressed the protest outside of Benjamin Netanyahu's Congress at all. Or if I was going to address it, I would say that it is a fantastic demonstration of the First Amendment in this country, that people have the right and the freedom to protest, and not only that, but also the very fact that this right-wing Donald Trump backed this far right Trump of Israel coming into U.S. Congress and addressing the American Congress while simultaneously claiming that the First Amendment principles that student protesters showed were actually somehow foreign actors is completely unacceptable, and that we have to immediately get Israel to follow through on the ceasefire negotiation by denying them further
Cenk,
weapons.
who are you gonna
You know
be?
what every mainstream media outlet would have said after that response?
I don't care.
He,
Call you a
he didn't
Nazi?
address the flag burning. He didn't address Hamas. So that means he's in favor of Hamas.
Yeah.
And he's in favor of burning the flag.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't care if they were to say that. Then I would turn around and, just like Trump does all the time, I would have been like, fake news.
They call him a terrorist. Fox News just put out an article about how he's a radical leftist extremist. He's a terrorist who's anti-Semitic. He's in the top 10 Stop Anti-Semitism anti-Semites of the year and all this other shit, right? Like, you on the other end, it's like you are with purpose choosing to dedicate your life to all of these stories that just vilify poor people, vilify minority groups, vilify trans folk, and then afterwards be like, I have to do this, you see? My hands are tied. If I don't do this, then everyone will think that I'm the extreme radical left, and then we won't be able to pass any policies, while the Democrats continue to move further and further right. And all of a sudden, it looks like it's so fucking far away. The Overton window is literally miles away. We've completely forgotten
American
what we
flag.
are.
And that's a loss for us. Okay,
Yeah, no, you just
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This independent series is made entirely possible thanks to our patrons. It was produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimongi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Bohem, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, and Words Greenwood. Not to mention all the other patrons you now see on screen. We couldn't have done this show without you. If you can help support the show, please check out patreon.com/the Serfs to unlock bonus secret episodes as well as get the content before anyone else.